Council staff, would you please proceed with roll call?
Councilmember Connor.
Here.
Or, sorry, excuse me, Commissioner Connor here.
I knew what you meant. Thank you.
Congratulations on your promotion, Carl. Commissioner Raymond, present. Commissioner Westmoreland, absent. Commissioner Jackson, sorry.
I see him.
Commissioner Sturpko.
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Jones-Williams. Commissioner Bayham. And so I think that's it. Commissioner Hill, I had you.
You had me. Okay, great.
So right now we have 4 members. We do not have a quorum, but we can proceed with the opening remarks and public comment break.
All right, thank you very much. So the COVID-19 pandemic continues to preclude us from meeting safely in a public forum. We must therefore continue to operate in this virtual fashion using the public comment guidelines outlined by the Louisiana Attorney General. Here are the public comment rules that we will follow today. At the beginning of the meeting, staff will read the agenda for today's meeting in its entirety. That agenda is also online at council.nola.gov. We will then recess for 30 minutes to allow citizens to submit written comments for any agenda item. Anyone wishing to comment should go to council.nola.gov and fill out an online public comment form. Only written public comments will be accepted. Public comment will be limited to 1 comment per person per item. Comments should also be limited to 2 minutes when read aloud and be germane to the agenda item at hand. Public comment will be closed at the end of the 30-minute public comment period. No written comments will be accepted beyond that point. Before voting on an agenda item, council staff will read any public comment received for a pending agenda item. Would council staff please read the agenda in full?
Agenda item number 1, roll call. Agenda item 2, recess to receive public comment. Agenda item 3, approval of the minutes from the February 10th, 2021 meeting. Agenda item 4, comments from council members Palmer and Bentz. Agenda item 5, expert panel update, report from panel of historians on work to date. Agenda item 6, stakeholder engagements, report from commissioners on stakeholder engagements to date. Agenda item 7, vote on final report recommendations. Vote by commissioners on renaming recommendations to be placed in final report to council. A, the following items will be removed from consideration. General Taylor Street will be removed from consideration for change because it doesn't fall under the ordinance language. Washington Park will be removed from consideration for change because it doesn't fall under the ordinance language. B, the following items will be ratified from the February 10th meeting. 1, a motion to change the recommended name for Lee Circle from Leah Chase Circle to Harmony Circle. 2, a motion to recommend Washington Artillery Park be renamed for Oscar Dunn. 3, a motion to recommend Low Place be renamed for Charles McKenna. C, the following items are new motions to be voted on. 1, a motion to change the recommended name from Lee Circle from Leah Chase Circle to Egalite Circle. 2, a motion to recommend Conrad Street be renamed for Jasper. D, the attached document includes all other renaming recommendations that will be voted on to affirm and ratify previous actions of the commission. I'm going to read that. I will read that attachment in full also. Current name refers to the current name of the street. Initial recommendation is what the commission initially recommended, and the final recommendation will be the same as the initial recommendation. Current name is Beauregard Avenue. Initial and final recommendation will be Sherwood, Woody, Gagliano Avenue. Current name, Beauregard Drive. The initial recommendation and final recommendation will be Doris Jean Castle Drive. Current name, Berman Avenue. The initial and final recommendations will be Rodolphe des Dunes. Current street, Berman Place. The recommendation is to be PBS Hinchback Place. Current street, Berman Highway. The recommendation is to be Eleanor Pete Highway. Berman Park. The recommendation is to be renamed Dr. Morris FX Jeff Senior Park. Bragg Street, to be renamed Celestine Street. Burke Avenue and Road, to be renamed Juan San Malo Avenue. Calhoun Street, to be renamed Father Louis J. Twomey Street. Captiville Street, to be renamed Judge Ivan L.R. Lamel Street. Comus Court, to be renamed Julia Aaron Humbles Court. Drew Avenue, to be renamed Francis Joseph Gaudet Avenue. Forshey Street, to be renamed Charles Buddy Bolden Street. General Early Drive, to be renamed Dent Family Drive. General Meyer Avenue, to be renamed Dr. Rudy Lombard Avenue. General Ogden Drive, to be renamed Herman Midlow Drive. Governor Nichols Street, to be renamed Lois Edward Ellie Street. Lane Street, to be renamed Georgia Street. Robert E. Lee Boulevard, to be renamed Allen Toussaint Boulevard. Lee Street, to be renamed Leontine Goins Luke Street. McShane Place, to be renamed Joseph Guillaume Place. Mouton Street, to be renamed Margaret Elizabeth Street. Palmer Avenue, to be renamed Edith Rosenwald Stern Avenue. Palmer Park, to be renamed John Minor Wisdom Park. Patton Street, to be renamed Nils R. Douglas Street. Penn Street, to be renamed Dr. Sarah Mayo Street. Sem Street, to be renamed Veronica Brown Hill Street. Raphael Sem Street, to be renamed Dolly Adams Street. Slidell Street, to be renamed Henry James Red Allen Street. Tulane Avenue, to be renamed Allison Tootie Montana Avenue. Bignard Street, to be renamed Diane Mamadi French Cole Street. Wilkes Lane, to be renamed Dr. Lewis A. Martinet Lane. And Sophie Wright Place, to be renamed John Jack Nelson Place. Again, these are all initial recommendations that the commission will be ratifying today. And item 8 on the agenda is adjournment. Those are all the items on the agenda.
Thank you very much. With that, we will recess for 30 minutes for public comment. Andrew, what time should we all be back?
3:38.
3:38. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible that I could make comments before you do the 30-minute recess, or would that violate the protocols?
Andrew?
Executive counsel says that Councilmember Banks is good to make comment now.
Okay.
I apologize, guys. I've got to get on another call, but I wanted to, first of all, say thank you to each of you for the multiple hours of work that you have done getting this to where it is today. I also want to say thank you to all of the citizens who participated in helping us get to this point. This is a process that we were intentional in having citizen participation. In order to make this thing work, we knew that it could not be something that was driven from the top down, but it had to come from the bottom up. And we wanted the citizen participation, and I sincerely appreciate all that you have done in getting us to this point. I want the public, though, to be very clear that this is far from final. These suggestions are coming from the commission and then have to go through a process before it even gets to the city council. So, Andrew, I'm not sure if you have that entire city planning process, but if you do, if you could at some point read that so that can be on the record so that the public can clearly understand how this is going to play out in the timeline. And I've already gotten some calls. Whatever happens today, no street names are going to be changed on tomorrow. So yeah. This is a process, and I just wanted everybody to be clear. So, Carl, I have the ultimate appreciation of you as the chairman, and to each and every one of you commissioners. It is not easy to offer yourself a public service, and it's certainly not easy when you're getting criticized for doing the work that you have been charged to do. So I know that that many of you all had to suffer through some unpleasant conversations and some probably not nice emails. But at the end of the day, the work is valuable. This is an important undertaking. And again, you have my sincere appreciation, and we will continue this process to get the best possible outcome. And I'm going to close by saying this so everybody's clear. Nothing that we do is an attempt to rewrite history. This is, however, us exercising the authority to honor who we choose to honor. That is what this is about. No one can rewrite history, but this city has the authority and the ability and the responsibility to pay homage and respect to the people we deem are necessary. So with that, again, thank you all. I'm not sure if Kristen, you're going to speak now or if you're going to wait until after recess. I apologize, y'all. This Zoom technology is great when it works, but then they book you with two different things at the same time. So let me apologize. And again, thank you all.
Understood. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Palmer, do you want to go now or you want to wait until?
It's really the pleasure of you, Carl, since you became the honorary council member earlier.
Right. So if you would like to, so you could get on with, I know you have a ton of other things, you're more than welcome to go forward now.
I'll say a few words. Usually, Councilmember Banks is our closer, but I would just like to echo some of his comments. I do want to thank all the commissioners for your work. I know it's been long, it's been arduous. I know there's been, but that is part of the public process, right? And we set this up, as Councilmember Banks said, to make sure that we had a robust public process. With that, I do want to thank Cleveland Spears for setting up that interactive website and the rest of the council members for supporting this and supporting it within our budget to ensure that the public had the ability not only to attend virtual meetings, but also to go onto the website and to add comments and also to see the vast amount of research that has been done. With that, I really want to then thank the New Orleans Public Library and the Historic New Orleans Collection. The fact that they have given of themselves and given us so many researchers to do this has been truly amazing. From the outset, what we had wanted to accomplish and what I especially wanted to accomplish is to ensure that this conversation is based in fact and not an emotive place. We all have emotions around these issues, and as we well should. And a lot of these emotions stem from the fact that we've never had true conversations about race and reconciliation, where we have been and where we need to go. Unfortunately, that's never stopped us from saying what a great gumbo of a city we are. But at the end of the day, our streets are not reflective of that. 95% of our streets are named after white men. And they forget the history of women, of African Americans, of Haitians, of Creoles, of the people that built this city. And the amazing history. In fact, as an amateur historian, I truly believe that our history is much more real and interesting when it's told in its entirety. And so to me, it was really important that these conversations are based in actual history. And it could not have happened if it wasn't for the leadership of Sue Mobley and Thomas Adams, who have really compiled an amazing set of historians, of researchers to really delve into all the different names of the streets. And because of that, we have found that some of the streets that people thought they were named after really weren't named after them. And so that's the value of being based in this. The other value is it's created conversations amongst tables and places all over the city of what streets mean, what they mean to them. And I think that's a very important step. It is not the end of the conversation, it's only the beginning of the conversation. And so I just want to thank all of you for participating in this. I know it's been difficult at best. It's not over with. I had a conversation with Mark earlier this afternoon. This is a continuation. This is the first step, right? And so we are all going to have to keep doing this and keep meeting and keep pushing the envelope and having these discussions about truly what is our city, who we want to represent us. And that means all around us. And so again, I just want to thank y'all for your work. And I really look forward to continuing to work through this process while we start that process and continue the process of renaming our streets so they're reflective of us as a city. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Palmer. This commission started its work 8 months ago because of the courage of our city council, led by you and Councilmember Banks, to initiate the difficult conversations wrapped within what should have been a much easier discussion to scrutinize who and what we choose to honor patriotically in New Orleans. Removal of Confederate leaders and supporters of white supremacy and their lost cause is clear and defining about who and what we collectively, as New Orleanians and Americans, think is worthy of honoring, right? And so, with that, we thank you all for spearheading this movement by co-authoring our enabling ordinance. and New Orleans will be much better for this conversation happening. So thank you very much for doing this in general and for taking the time today to address not just the commission, but the public as well. We have, I guarantee you, it may have been difficult work at times, but we have enjoyed doing it. So thank you very much for the opportunity. All right, Andrew, with that, we will go into the 30-minute recess.
Because this is a non-voting item, public comment actually can run concurrently with those comments. So we can still set it at the 3:38 mark.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioners, please be back at 3:37. We'll start the meeting at 3:38. Thank you very much.
And commissioners, that is 30 minutes.
And thank you very much, Andrew. Will we do the roll call again, please?
Absolutely. Commissioner Connor, present. Commissioner Raymond, present. Commissioner Westmoreland, present. Commissioner Hill, present. Commissioner Sterbko,
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Present.
okay. Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Bayham, Commissioner Jones-Williams, and Commissioner Hill.
Here, present.
We have 6 members. We have a quorum.
Andrew, Commissioner Jackson's trying to connect his audio. He's there. He's just not.
I see him on now. We're trying to get him some technical support.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you all. Commissioners, I'm sorry. The remainder of the agenda will be our first quorum discussion of the items listed. Commissioners, feel free to give feedback where necessary. Item 3 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Commissioners received a copy of the minutes from the February 10th meeting. Are there any corrections or questions? Andrew, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments on this.
If there are no further corrections, or no corrections rather, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
So moved.
Is there been moved and properly second that the minutes, pardon me, be approved as distributed? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Then the minutes are approved. We've already gone through item 4, which was the comments of council members Banks and Palmer, and I greatly appreciate both of them sharing with us today. This was a courageous thing that they did to undertake this process and get us going on this dialogue and discussion. And I truly appreciate them putting their trust in this commission to do this work in the way that it was intended to occur.
We do have public comment on this issue.
Okay, go forward.
Okay. First comment is by Ronnie Lanasa, not a paid representative. The street commission members and council are failing to allow full resident participation, coupled with ignoring the clear Louisiana legal obligation to protect the public's right to observe and comment. Beginning with the illegal proxy and straw man polls using the Sturvey Monkey tool, the commission has operated outside the Louisiana open meetings law in the spirit of false promises of inclusion and transparency. The commission has yet to publish an accurate specific agenda notice. The illegal practice of encouraging accepting non-agenda motions, deliberations, and votes with no layover, rendering zero chance for public participation is simply wrong. Walking around meetings, deliberating, and making decisions outside of public view is illegal. The non-essential New Orleans Street Commission should start over with fully open meetings that at a minimum directly include the residents and property owners most impacted. In short, if you're going to change the name of Grandma Streets, Grandma's neighbors should have the lead on input for the address changes. From the beginning, the Orleans Street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside of public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused and restarted when the actual residents can fully participate. Next comment is by Charles Marsala, not a paid representative. Dear council members Palmer and Banks, the 7th whereas clause in the city council motion instructs the commission to remedy New Orleans mistreatment and sometimes violent mistreatment of immigrant groups. The first action should have been for the city council to identify those immigrant groups and make sure each one had a member appointed as commissioner. The commission should have heard public comments on each street. When the report first came out, officers of the various Italian organizations called me to meet with them and hear their displeasure of the SRC's recommendations. The Italian community is a stakeholder and was asked our opinion. Tivoli Circle and Tivoli Place are being taken away, and someone other than our top choices chosen by the commission. The Italian community is seeing this as further mistreatment by city officials. Walter Isaacson tweeted in August 2020, the street name is Tivoli Circle. A former director in Mayor Cantrell's office issued a petition to request the mayor simply put up Tivoli Circle street signs. A 1961 book explains the names of Tivoli Place from 1807 to 1877 and the Tivoli Circle since 1807. Tivoli Place came back as the name by ordinance in 2015. Are the structures and items of this agenda an attempt to fix errors brought by the State Attorney General to the New Orleans City Attorney? What are those errors? How does the fix resolve them? For the last 2 years, the Italian community has asked permission to erect state-approved historic markers in the French Quarter and been denied. One of these markers is in Cabrini Park and to Mother Cabrini. There is no identifying sign in Cabrini Park. This too is seen as the mistreatment the Street Renaming Commission is to remedy. Thank you for your desire to remedy the mistreatment of Sicilians and Italians. Next comment is by Caitlin Clement, not a paid representative. Recognize, celebrate, and honor history that does not center white people or prop up white supremacy. The city's foundations and roots are Black and brown and indigenous citizens, and this should be clear from our biggest monuments to our small streets. Next comment is by Mary Meissing Gubala, not a paid representative. I would like to advocate for homeowners, renters, businesses along the streets that are proposed for renaming. Before consideration of renaming an additional 37 streets, has an analysis been done of the renaming of Jefferson, Bankston, and Francis? This could serve as a house-by-house case study to assess how many residents, 1, knew about the name change initially being discussed, 2, knew that the name was changed, 3, received the postcard itemizing the agencies they need to notify about their street name change, 4, have identified additional agencies and/or items that had to be notified and/or changed, 5, have done these notifications and/or changes, 6, how much time and/or money has these changes cost them? I believe it is grossly unfair to subject our residents to these times and money expenditures. Additionally, it is grossly irresponsible for our city to be spending time and money on this when it has major issues to deal with, like crime, drainage, and streets, not to mention the pandemic. Next comment is by Aaron Fruman, not a paid representative. I hope that by renaming streets, buildings, and other structures in our built environment to honor those we admire today, we can encourage a more honest reconciliation with our history, the legacy of slavery, and the values of inclusion and warmth that our city represents to the rest of the country. Next comment is by Melvin Schneider, not a paid representative. 'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague. What's Montague? It is nor hand nor foot, nor arm nor face, nor any other part, belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes. Without that title, Romeo doth thy name, and for that name, which is no part of thee, take all myself, Shakespeare. Apologies to followers of iambic pentameter. I can hear the commission, city council, and mayor saying, 'tis but thy street name that is my enemy. Oh, be some other street name. What is this in a street name? Street names are not the enemy of this commission, the council, or the mayor. Street names are merely scapegoats, since the officials of the city, with all their tax revenue and resources, are unable to fix the actual underlying problems. This is an exercise in futility. Next comment is by Ethan Bridges, not a paid representative. Quote, they're not going to be tasked with matching those names. They're not going to be tasked with matching those names with those streets. That'll happen at the neighborhood level, at the district level, through greater conversation, unquote, said Fowler, who represents District C. Council members say the entire process will be as transparent as possible. Rely heavily on public input at the neighborhood level. Quote, it's essential we begin this conversation that we're talking to each other and not at each other, and that is bottom up, not top down, unquote, said Joe G. Russo, who represents District A. The description, quote, above is from 6/20/20 WWL TV news article. This commission has operated in the opposite manner. The commission ignores the residents of Palmer Avenue and Lakeview. The Commissioner Sturpco proposes the most milquetoast changes, Mount Carmel for Conrad, or let's leave Lakeview streets alone. The commission undermines the democratic voice of the process and residents by sitting idly by as his proposal does. The next comment is from Cynthia Bridges, not a paid representative. The commission is drunk with power and control. If they had any shred of decency, dignity, or honor, they would apologize to the citizens, the city council, and the mayor, resign their posts, and fail to issue a report. However, they will not. They will place the minority of New Orleanians who live in these areas under the heavy yoke of their control and slavery. Some people say everything you like in New Orleans is because of Black people. It is true that everything you hate about New Orleans. Is it true that everything you hate about New Orleans is because of Black people? Both these statements are abject lies. Many different cultures across many racial groups have contributed greatly to New Orleans. Rather than promoting division, distrust, and disunity, address actual problems rather than perceived problems driven by fringe conspiracy theories of wish for Black supremacy. The next comment is by Martin Lucian Clapp Jr., not a paid representative. It is funny that this commission is spearheaded by Councilwoman Palmer. She is heading up a commission that seeks to remove her own name from a street despite the will of the residents of that street. The real irony of the situation is that Councilwoman Palmer is herself a picture and be stage of white supremacy. She colonized the seat of a strong Black councilwoman, taking the power and wealth of that street seat for herself. But that's the story of modern day America, white people stealing from black people and then taking credit for all the progress built on our backs. Councilwoman Palmer should resign for seeking shame. That's all the public comment on this item.
Thank you very much. And as usual, our practice is not to go tit for tat with comments that come in from the community, but on occasion there are things that are said that must be addressed. One, this commission has operated above board and according to the rules as we have been given them from the beginning. We are not seeking to do anything other than give the advice that we were set up to give. Nothing that we rule on is going to carry the day, as we are an advisory committee. So nothing that we recommend actually will come into play tomorrow, as Councilman Banks said at the beginning of this meeting. Someone mentioned that the street names are not the enemy. They may be correct about that, but they certainly were the tools of the enemy, literally, those who were seeking to perpetuate the lost cause of the Confederacy. And they were used to try to provide a message to citizens, obviously mostly it's citizens of color, that no matter what the outcome of the war was, this place was going to remain a place where they would be second class at best. So us addressing those issues, i.e. the street names, is both relevant and important. On the question of being ignored, citizens' comments being ignored, particularly on Palmer Avenue and the like, just because your point of view doesn't carry the day does not mean that your point of view was ignored. It means that your argument didn't carry the day with the majority of those voting. We very much provided lots of opportunity and time talking with you all about your concerns. We explained to you the things that were weighing on our minds as we made decisions in the recommendations. And it just, that because you did not get your point of view or your street name approved does not mean that we ignored you. And we certainly did not ignore Commissioner Sterbko, who has gone above and beyond trying to make sure that we connect with all members of the communities that are involved as best as possible. That being said, commissioners, do you have any comments or questions about this agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5, the expert panel update.
Hey, Carl.
Yes, sir.
Like at this time, I can also do what Councilmember Banks asked, which was to read through what the actual process is that the
Okay. Yes, please.
has to go through another process to be able to actually be effectuated. So just so that for the public's awareness, in order to actually rename a street, the report that is being delivered to the council at the end of this month is simply a set of recommendations. The council to rename a street has to follow these steps. They first have to send a written request by the district council member to the CPC for consideration of a name change. The council members and the staff have to meet with CPC and the GIS staff, that's our mapping department here at the city, GIS staff to review the process. The council members submit a formal request to CPC and DPW to review their proposal. They then have to obtain a statement of cost for replacement of the street signs. They also have to identify the funds that will go towards paying for those street signs. They then have to submit public notice. CPC must hold a public hearing within 60 days of a completed request. Completed request includes securing funding sources. CPC must notify all owners, residents, occupants, neighborhood organizations whose properties have frontage on the affected streets. They must also publish notice in the official journal once per week for 3 weeks prior to public hearing. The official journal would be in the Advocate. DPW must post notification signs at each intersection of the public right-of-way that would be affected by the name change 15 days prior to the public hearing. The CPC staff then sends the proposed change to the Planning Advisory Committee for review. The Planning Advisory Committee includes representation from the Department of Public Works, Parks and Parkways, Real Estate and Records, Safety and Permits, Sewage and Water Board, Entergy, the Historic Districts Landmark Commission, the Bucharest Commission, and the Bucharest Commission participates as needed. Also consulted on this are 311, 911, and the GIS systems. If the VCC and HDL, the street is in a VCC or HDLC district, CPC will request a recommendation from the appropriate commission prior to the public meeting. If none is given, this shall be considered evidence of lack of objection to the proposal. CPC staff prepares a report and recommendation for the City Planning Commission. The City Planning Commission holds a public hearing on the request, votes on the recommendation, and the recommendation is sent to the council. Finally, the council must act by ordinance to effectuate the change. This can be done in a few ways, but the most basic are that receive a report at the council meeting. They first read an ordinance at that first council meeting, and then they pass the ordinance at the next subsequent council meeting in 2 weeks. They can also introduce an ordinance for first read once it has been delivered to them at any point that they desire, but it's only after those 5 preceding steps have happened. So just because CPC has sort of written their report and sent to the council, it's still up to the council to decide when to introduce the ordinance and then pass it. And that is that's the process they have to go through. CPC also has 6 pages of rules around this that folks can find on the CPC website.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. Are there any other comments or questions on agenda item 4? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5, expert panel update. Our expert panel has consistently and diligently continued researching the New Orleans streets and have updates and recommendations to share based on their ongoing research. I want to thank Sue Mobley and Thomas Adams and their team. They have continued to be thorough and responsive, very responsive. And I would, at this point, turn it over to Sue or Thomas, whoever's going to take the lead on this update.
I think I will go first with General Taylor. We received an email from Mr. Timothy Brinks on General Taylor Street, citing a 1855 Persona map and 1853 newspaper listings that would place the likelihood of General Taylor Street being named for General Zachary Taylor and not Richard Taylor on the table. Thanks to the incredible resource of the Louisiana Digital Library and some hard box digging in the city archives, I cannot confirm that the street was named for General Zachary Taylor through an ordinance naming it thus. I can confirm that at the period of time where the city of Lafayette merges with New Orleans in February of 1852, that it was after Zachary Taylor's triumphal entry into the city in December 4th of 1847, after his receiving a gold medal from the state in July of 1848, after speaking to the girls of the Clio School later that year, and after a mayoral pronouncement upon his death in 1850 that ordered flags lowered and gun salutes. So I would say that the odds are extremely good, and the circumstantial evidence certainly supports that the 1853 map, newspaper listings for properties for sale along General Taylor Street, and the surrounding excitement for his presence as a victorious general and as a president from Louisiana do support the claim. And so we withdraw General Taylor from consideration as a Confederate street, and really want to thank Timothy Brinks for bringing great evidence and sending me down an awesome wormhole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thomas, do you have anything to add?
You're muted, Thomas.
Sorry. What I'm going to do now, in the interest of streamlining some things, at the request of Commissioner Hill earlier this week, or I should say at the end of last week, we reached out to the large panel of expert historians and scholars to survey some opinions on the term égalité as a possible rename for Lee Circle. And rather than put this in a narrative, I thought it would be in the interest of both honoring the voices of some of the people who responded to this, of which I will say there was universal acclaim amongst a really diverse group of scholars. I'm just going to read some of their responses to this. And so the first comes from Professor Brian Wagner, a scholar of New Orleans at the University of California, Berkeley. In 1789, the French National Constituent Assembly enshrined the principle of égalité in its Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens, proclaiming that all citizens had equal rights before the law. Égalité was a political principle that fired not only the French Revolution, but also the revolts against slavery and colonialism that were already happening throughout the empire, most notably in Saint-Domingue, which today is known as Haiti, where leaders like Toussaint Louverture were staking their own claim to equality, forcing the French National Convention in 1794 to acknowledge in law the general emancipation that had already been accomplished in fact. The ideal of equality was already echoing through Louisiana as protesters in New Orleans demanded their rights, and slaves, well informed about events in France and Haiti, conspired to build their own revolution. Even as the commitment to universal equality faded in France following the restoration of the monarchy and the rise of the Napoleonic Empire, the political ideal of égalité remained alive. In New Orleans, Creole intellectuals and reformers held fast to this ideal, which they identified not only with the United States, but also and especially with France. During the US Civil War, a group of Creole intellectuals founded the bilingual newspaper La Union, eventually relaunched as the New Orleans Tribune to express their discontent with slavery and inequality. In 1868, a multiracial convention wrote a new state constitution that codified the idea of égalité, drawing its principles from both the French philosophies and the US Constitution. At this moment, Louisiana was breaking new ground in its constitutional commitment to equality, and its concepts were quickly adopted in congressional legislation and national party platforms. If the 1868 state constitution only remained in effect for a little over a decade, it nevertheless provided a constitutional framework for laws, including segregation and disenfranchisement laws, most notably in the challenge to Louisiana's separate car law, which led to the notorious decision in Plessy versus Ferguson of 1896. And now this comes from Professor Roseanne Adderley, a historian at Tulane University. Within the current borders of the United States, Louisiana stands out for many reasons, including the colonization of this part of the Gulf South in the 1600s and 1700s by French and Spanish imperial powers, rather than the English forces which dominated the European takeover of the eastern seaboard. While all parts of the country have inherited cultural traditions from Native Americans and hundreds of years of enslaved Africans, French influence in language, culture, and politics is a part of Louisiana's many specific distinctions. Choosing a French term in part highlights this one distinctive element of our regional history. More importantly, the choice of this term points to the connection of New Orleans to revolutionary ideas of freedom, equity, and justice, which had global impact in the late 1700s and early 1800s through the French and Haitian revolutions. While the phrase liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, fraternity, or brotherhood, depending on the translation, gained its first significant widespread usage during the French Revolution, the ideas underlying the phrase came more broadly from the mid-1700s Enlightenment thinking about the desirability of societies based on the consent of those governed and respect for variously defined rights to be held by all citizens, or even all people. French governments, long after the revolution, would readopt these ideas and incorporate them into different national governing documents. The idea of égalité has been broadly defined, containing especially notions related to equal treatment under the law or government or by government without distinction based on any kind of pre-existing state. Ideas of liberty and égalité had their fullest expression in the anti-slavery Republic of Haiti, created in the former French Caribbean colony of Saint-Domingue, where simultaneous to the French Revolution, enslaved people and free people of African descent overthrew both slavery and colonialism and created the first fully free republic in the American hemisphere. Emigration to Louisiana during the Haitian Revolution tripled the size of the city of New Orleans in the 1800s, and the political and cultural connections to the ideals of this era are numerous. While the enslavement of Africans and African Americans persisted in Louisiana until the Civil War, multiple generations of people of African descent looked to these revolutionary French and Haitian traditions in crafting their own visions of freedom in the mid to late 19th century. Notable among intellectual and political voices influenced by these traditions would be the founders of the bilingual New Orleans Tribune, La Tribune de la Nouvelle-Orléans, not only the first African-American daily newspaper in the United States, but one of the clearest, most organized expressions of visions for racial and class equality as slavery came to an end. Connections to these ideals also, no doubt, influenced the radically progressive creation of the 1868 Louisiana Constitution. While the dismantling of Reconstruction and the rise of Jim Crow segregation forestalled a more enduring pursuit of these ideals until the civil rights era of the 1950s and 1960s, turning back to this critical 19th century language allows for celebration of multiple compelling elements of New Orleans history. Rather than choosing from several English language terms that generically point to values of equity and justice, deliberately choosing this French language term would celebrate New Orleans' unique heritage and also celebrate the leadership of people of African descent who, well before it became common either in Louisiana or in the United States, pursued the broadest possible definitions of what égalité could mean. I've got a few more, but I'm just going to read a brief one here, also from Professor Lawrence Powell, emeritus faculty member at Tulane University, on égalité. It's an inspired solution, and its evocation of the enduring impact of the French-Haitian Republican revolutionary ideals that thrust New Orleans into the struggle for universal freedom and equality. You can hang a gracious plenty of worthies and worthy achievements on that one word alone. The 1st and 2nd Louisiana Native Guards, André Caillou, the New Orleans Union and La Nouvelle-Orléans and La Tribune de la Nouvelle-Orléans, the 1868 Constitution, the struggle in the federal courts, exemplified by cases like Plessy, the New Orleans chapter of the NAACP, and the persistence and the long persistence of the Afro-Creole protest tradition. The term contains, again, Professor Powell's words, Whitman's multitudes. And again, I'm going to stop there just in the interest of time today, but we've got a few more of those. I'm happy to kind of forward them to commission members if you want. But again, in requesting information on that term egalite, I would say that for once in this process, amongst a very diverse group of scholars, there was pretty universal acclaim and happiness with the choice of that term.
Thank you very much, Thomas and Sue. So based on the advice from our expert panel after researching information received from the member of the public on General Taylor, as you commissioners, as you've heard, we will remove that street from our consideration. What was not discussed just now, but it certainly is in the agenda, is Washington Park will also be removed from consideration for the same reason. But we will, as with some other streets that don't fit our ordinance language, have a strong suggestion to the city council that they look at renaming Washington Park to honor Ellis Marsalis, as suggested by several members of the public during the course of the last 8 months. Commissioners will also, and Thomas, correct me if I heard you correctly, just not in the same words, it is also the suggestion of the historians to use or to change Lee Circle to egalite now.
Yes, I would say that is a generally agreed upon consensus. Yes, that
okay.
Works.
Thank you, and we will vote on that under an agenda item coming shortly. Or not a vote on, but address it in an agenda item. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the historians or comments?
Just to say thank you again for your remarkable work in guiding us in this process, and I hope, allowing many of our citizens to learn and to understand our history better, and to celebrate those that have who have not been celebrated and who have helped make New Orleans such a special place, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Thank you for your contribution.
Agreed. Any other comments or questions?
I want to echo Commissioner Hill's comments. It's been amazing working with you all for the last 6-7 months, working through this process and creating a very objective process to doing this work. So kudos and thank you so much.
Thank you. Andrew, are there any public comments to this section?
You're on mute, Andrew.
We still can't hear you, Andrew.
Yes, there is public comment.
Okay, could you read those for us, please?
Sure. First comment is by Virginia Baldwin, not a paid representative. The renaming of parks, streets and parks is a huge waste of time and money and will not make life better for anyone and will only confuse longtime citizens. Use that money to provide protection to the lower socioeconomic neighborhoods that are plagued by crime. If that doesn't appeal to you, how about fixing potholes that would make every New Orleans citizen's life better? Next comment is by Mark Rudnay, not a paid representative. In the panel of experts' final report, Dr. Charles Rudnay was the top recommendation for renaming of Captiville at your November 24th meeting. The commission approved the top ranked candidates for street renaming, with the odd exception of Rudnay. Instead of following the panel's recommendation, Judge Ivan Ramel was floated by Commissioner Carl O'Connor and quickly approved without discussion. Ramel received another favorable vote at the last commission meeting, again without discussion. Ramel has an admirable record as district judge, but he was not recommended anywhere in the report. Rudnay forged one of the most important civil rights campaigns in American history, and frankly, he is more worthy candidate. Moreover, Ramel is still alive. As you know, the City Planning Commission street naming policy states, in order to reduce any perception of misconduct, favoritism, or bias, no street shall be renamed to honor a person who has been deceased for no less than 5 years. I'm concerned that there may be an element of favoritism, or at least the appearance of such, in the Lamel recommendation. Commissioner Connor and Judge Lamel are both distinguished graduates of Xavier University and Loyola College of Law. I certainly hope that their mutual connections did not factor into the recommendation. The New Orleans Tribune recently urged the commissioners to replace Captain Bill with Rudnay, stating, "We are disheartened to learn that Dr. Charles Rudnay's name has been supplanted by another in the city street renaming process. We cannot think of another New Orleanian more deserving to have a street named in his honor than Dr. Rudnay. Surely there's no one living amongst us who is more worthy. I'm disappointed that the commission is not following the experts panel advice for the renaming of Capitol Street. I urge you to reconsider Dr. Rudnay. Regardless of the outcome, I commend your work and look forward to the new street names. Sincerely, Mark Rudnay." Next comment is by Michael Wallace, not a paid representative. "There are so many pressing issues for the city council to address right now, including a rising crime rate, lack of economic base and revenue for a city dependent on tourism and conventions, and basic city services such as repairing streets. When these problems have resolutions, then is the time to consider these actions." Next comment is by G.R. Lanassa, not a paid representative. "Under the Louisiana Constitution, the public has a right to fully participate in public meetings. It is clear beyond question, all members of the public have an absolute right to fully participate. Street commissioners failed in that duty to allow participation. A group of kids in Australia have been granted greater participation than the residents of the addresses under consideration. I recommend the item be tabled and process restarted only when the public can fully participate in normally noticed meetings, with specific agenda that fully meet the letter and spirit of Louisiana meetings. The non-essential New Orleans street renaming commissions will start over with fully open meetings that at a minimum directly include residents or property owners most impacted. In short, if you are going to change the name of Grandma Street, grandma and her neighbors should have the lead on input for address changes. From the beginning of the Orleans Street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside of public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused and restarted when the actual residents can participate." Next comment is by Charles Marsalit, not a paid representative. The last meeting, citizens who are critical thinker that did not accept unsubstantiated claims without their own independent research and verifications were disparaged by commissioner research rather than answer the questions raised. So the questions will be asked again. 1, schools have written and former city officials quoted as saying the street is Tivoli Circle. I believe that's supposed to be books. Books have been written and former city officials quoted as saying the street is Tivoli Circle and land Tivoli Place. Do the experts deny this? Do they have an answer? Why does the commission refuse to report or list Tivoli Circle as the name of an agenda item on the agenda? It is well documented that 60,000 Sicilians arrived into the French Quarter and were mistreated. Why is there nothing in the report acknowledging this and proposing the remedies required by the city council motion? Does the commission and experts agree with Walter Isaacson, who tweeted in August 2020, the name is Tivoli Circle? Former director in the mayor control's office issued a petition to request the mayor simply put up Tivoli Circle street signs. Does the commission and experts agree with the 1961 book? Explains the names are Tivoli Place from 1807 to 1877 and Tivoli Circle since 1807. Tivoli Place came back as the name by ordinance in 2015. Every meeting in the town and community is making the same comments, asking for a meeting with the commission with no offer. Is this not further mistreatment? Next comment is by Robert Baudet, AIA. Drew is Pierre and Mathurin Drew Gentili, city founding 1718. The next comment is by Linda Ousden, not a paid representative. I feel strongly that the suggestions from the naming commission are important for our city to adopt and move towards increased racial feeling and equity. It is destructive and regressive for the monuments and streets to honor people who contributed to slavery and racism. We should stand for equality and justice and honor those who did. Next comment is by Lewis Douglas, not a paid representative. In renaming Patton Street to honor Niels R. Douglas and its current street, Patton Street recognizes the principles of the person it honors. Civil War General Patton stood for the proposition that one person could own another person in all of its vestiges. He didn't just believe that, he fought for its maintenance. The subtext being the owner could name its property and dictate its religion, its culture, and its God. Patton fought to prevent enslaved people from the right to be people. Patton fought against the expansion of the constitutional definition of equal rights. The things we celebrate today as a free nation, marrying the person one chooses to love, education through reading, traveling without a master's pass. Patton killed men on the battlefield to have applied only to its white citizens. Patton led other men to take up arms and kill those who believed that enslaved Africans should not have the ability to live with and care for their own children until death do their part. General Patton maintained, through his violent behavior, that enslaved men and women could be separated from their spouse and children based upon the economic needs of the master. Mills Douglas stood for the proposition that blacks are people, deserving of rights given by God and protected by the Constitution. To the extent that this country was slow and reluctant to recognize those rights, Attorney Douglas assigned himself the responsibility to expand the nation's legal embrace of the once enslaved citizens and their heirs. Douglas' position aligns more clearly with the nation's founders in the quest to form a more perfect union. Douglas read, taught, and soldiered for this country and not against it. He accepted the oath to protect the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. General Patton was an enemy to the Union. The next comment is by Martin Lucian Platt Jr., not a paid representative. Last meeting, Sue Mobley showed the length to which she is a conspiracy theorist. She is mentally unfit to serve with this group and lightly taints all the work that researchers and commission have done. She talked about QAnon and Joe Biden, which I believe have never come up in these meetings. She listed an impressive number of universities and institutions represented on the research panel. However, she did not address that these quote researchers unquote are made up of folks all with the same mindset. With no diversity of thought on the panel, how can we expect a balanced conclusion? Rather than study the widespread historically appropriate papers and accounts of the time, she and the researchers promote wild conspiracy theories pieced together in modern times to create a problem where there was none. She should admit her ties to out-of-town progressive think tanks like the Ford Foundation, resign, and leave controversial conspiracy theories and black supremacy beliefs in the streets rather than in government chambers. The next comment is by Samantha Jackson, not a paid representative. The panel of historians have a common bias, and therefore I submit there should be no street name changes. Lee Circle is never the legal name, so why not keep Tivoli Circle? Next comment is by Beverly McKenna, not a paid representative. McKenna Publishing, the New Orleans Tribune wholeheartedly supports honoring Dr. Charles Roudinet by renaming Capitol Street in his honor. Dr. Roudenet's work as a newspaper publisher, physician, and civil rights activist inspires us as much as it did 36 years ago when we named our publication in spirit of the one he founded more than a century earlier to championing the rights of people of color. The last comment is by Heather Knight, not a paid representative. Though I support the renaming of many of the streets up for consideration by the city, I do not believe Calhoun Street should be changed due to the following reasons. Calhoun Street is part of the thematic naming of streets that is particularly vivid and unique. That is a particularly vivid and unique part of New Orleans. Calhoun Street is geographically located to be by Clay and Webster, as we have the Muses and Napoleon's victories and other places. The theme of the adjacent streets, Calhoun, Clay, Webster, is a unique and subtle theme that may be lost on some people, but the actual geography of the streets teaches American history in its spatiality at the time when Uptown New Orleans was being developed in the 1840s. Henry Clay was the Great Compromise Street. The street is intentionally situated between Calhoun of the south and Webster of the north, as he sought compromise such as the one in 1850 when these two figures became known as the Immortal Trio. Hence, to remove Calhoun Street embraces this important history lesson about conflict and compromise. I would also like to prove this within Tulane Avenue until further information is presented. Which member of the Tulane family is the avenue named after? If it is presumed to be named after the founder of Tulane Medical School, then you should consider including his first name, Paul. If it is named after his father or brother who owned enslaved Africans, then by all means rename the street. But if it's named after Paul Tulane, then add his first name. I fully support using Tootie Montana's name in another location in the city. Tootie is beloved cultural icon and a legend. And that's all the public comment on this item.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Commissioners, do you all have any comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, stakeholder engagements.
Connor, I believe that Councilmember Glapion has joined us and would just like to make a few.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Councilmember Glapion, and welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I do just want to add something to the conversation. I have a suggestion that I'd like included in your recommendations. Dr. Millie Charles, who we all know was a giant in social work here in the city and recently joined the Ancestors this past November, would like her name added to the names being considered.
Thank you, Councilmember Glapion. Question for you, do you have a specific street you would like us to consider it for, or her for, or just in general, you'd like her considered for a recommendation?
In general, not a specific street.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate again you joining us today, and welcome to the council.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, hearing nothing further on that item, we'll move on to agenda item 6, stakeholder engagement. Since July 2020, the commission has taken its outreach responsibility seriously. As you just saw, that outreach has been crucial in helping us stay within the ordinance bounds. I'd like to thank the Spears Group, especially Al Smith, for its assistance publicizing our meetings, creating our website, and coordinating our social media, television, radio, and print outreach, and polishing our reports to a quality that is worthy of representing the citizens of New Orleans. I'd also like to thank my fellow commissioners for their district outreach, especially Commissioner Hill, who coordinated documentation of our after-action activities from those stakeholder engagements. Special thanks also to Commissioner Sterbko, who arranged the bulk of our community meetings and led commission consideration of district stakeholder concerns and suggestions. There will be more public outreach via television, print, digital, and radio media once we publish the final report. This commission, as we've stated on multiple occasions, is advisory in nature, and anyone wishing to further advocate for or against this commission's recommendations should do so through the council's outreach coordinators or directly with the council members themselves. As your elected representatives, they will determine what actions, if any, they will take based on our report. Commissioner Hill, do you have any additional information on stakeholder engagements?
Not really, but just to note that documentation of all of the official commission meetings, as well as all of the individual neighborhood associations, organizations, and individual outreach meetings will be documented in the report. The dates and of those meetings, and yes, and then of course to say we hope people will continue to stay engaged once the final report to the city council.
Thank you very much. And I again want to just thank all of the members of the public who did engage in this process. We responded to pretty much everyone who reached out. We had meetings with all those who asked and could schedule the meetings within the parameters of our having to get this report to the council. As I just stated a minute ago, if you still have an opportunity to advocate for something that you would like to see different from what we have, and we strongly encourage that going forward. As Andrew read to you, there is a long process ahead for these recommendations should the council members take them up. Commission members, are there any other comments or questions about the stakeholder engagement agenda item? Hearing none, I will move on to, I'm sorry. Andrew, are there any public comments on agenda item 6?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
The comment is by William Mason, not a paid representative. Please do not change any street names. City leadership should focus efforts on improving the crime, litter, infrastructure, and homeless problems as top priorities. Changing street names is not a good use of city money and resources and creates confusion for people residing on those streets. Thank you. Next comment is by Alma Slayton Pettit, not a paid representative. As a native New Orleanian and Cedar citizen, I'm very concerned about renaming streets, avenues, and monuments named for historical figures. We are in danger of rewriting history instead of clarifying our community's past. We are a rare historic city, founded by many nationalities and races. Our history is what makes us unique among cities in our country. Rash actions condemn our city to mediocrity and the loss of identity. It doesn't change history. Have we no respect for the outstanding pioneers who founded our city and enabled many cultures to thrive? They were men and women of their time, not evildoers to be written out of history. How foolish we are to be blinded by individuals seeking to reduce our community to here and now, no history. How foolish and backward thinking. Shame on these leaders. Next comment is by Norman Trancosta, not a paid representative, to whom it may reside. I grew up in the 9th Ward and fondly remember having picnics at these circles with my dear departed grandmother. I am also a believer in the rich history of New Orleans and its preservation. This change culture movement is un-American and seeks to erase the rich and famous history of the city. You cannot change history by removing vestiges of it. Therefore, I am strongly opposed to renaming any historic street or park in New Orleans. Maybe you people should study the Russian Revolution of 1917. After the October 1917 Bolshevik takeover, monuments were removed, streets and cities were renamed, and historic and beautiful churches were blown up. Is this what you want for New Orleans? At least Russia is restoring its history and putting back monuments and restoring original names of streets and cities. You want to rename Recircle? Okay, restore its original name, Tivoli Circle. That would be the historically prudent thing to do. All other streets and park names should remain as is to preserve the history and culture of the city. The waste of time and money on this project should have been used to address black on black crime, trash and environmental issues, potholes, and other real problems of the city. I ask that you preserve the history of the city and concentrate on the real problems of New Orleans. It would break my dear grandmother's heart to see what you are doing to our city. Frankly, it's disgusting. What's next? Erecting statues of Lenin and Stalin? Preserve our city's history. Norman Trencosta. Next comment is by Tom Fierke. Apologies for the pronunciation.
Is Andrew frozen, Carl?
I think he may be.
Hey guys, this is Jarvis. I think he may be having an issue in the chamber.
Okay. We'll give you all a chance to remedy that.
Thank you. Let me give him a call and see if I can grab it.
Thank you. There he is. Unmute, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew, two things. You need to first unmute, and second, you pause for a couple of seconds. I'm not sure how many comments we missed.
Thank you, Jarvis. All right, I will go ahead and restart that comment. That comment is by Ronnie Lanessa, not a paid representative. I recommend the activities be tabled and the process restarted only when the public can fully participate in properly noticed meetings with specific agendas that fully meet the letter and spirit of Louisiana's open meeting law. The non-essential New Orleans Street Renaming Commission should start over with fully open meetings that at a minimum proactively and directly include the residents and property owners not most impacted. In short, if you are going to change the name of Grandma Streets, Grandma and neighbors should have the lead on input for the address changes. From the beginning, the Orleans Street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside of public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused when we started when the actual residents can fully participate. A group of kids in Australia should not be the primary body changing the addresses of thousands of local residents and property owners. Next comment is by Charles Marsala, not a paid representative. Why is the commission not meeting with the Italian community? Does the commission experts and city council not consider us a stakeholder? Next comment is by Tom Longmire, not a paid representative. I've sent many emails to the mayor and city council over the past few years regarding the monuments and street names. I have received very few replies. I was opposed to removing the Confederate War Memorial sculptures and I'm opposed to renaming streets. I voted against those in favor of removing history and will continue to do so if streets are renamed. Confederates were fighting for independence and the original intent of the U.S. Constitution. The North provoked the war because they couldn't afford to lose the South's revenue. Lincoln stated that in his first inaugural address. The country worked hard to reunite after the tragedy of the war. This country has supported both sides of the war until recently. Past presidents have praised the likes of Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. Joe Biden voted in favor of restoring both of their citizenships. Robert E. Lee was against slavery and against secession, but he fought to defend his home state from invasion. Where does all this hate and intolerance for the Confederacy come from? This current Confederate-phobia is worse than as any homophobia or xenophobia or Islamophobia. It is as bad as the anti-Jewish actions in Nazi Germany prior to the Holocaust, especially now that even Confederate cemeteries are being desecrated. The past should not be judged by today's standards, to use a recent Joe Biden phrase, which he used to defend Uyghur genocide in China. Really, there were different norms back then. Where do you draw the line? Lincoln, Grant, Sherman, and Custer may have won the war, but they, along with the Buffalo Soldiers, all took part in the Native American genocide. How far do you take this cancel culture? Marie Laveau owned at least 7 slaves in her lifetime. Homer Plessy's grandfather fought with the Confederacy. Louis Armstrong played Dixie. African Americans fought with the Confederacy and they owned slaves. MLK was a womanizer and opposed to gay marriage. One look hard enough, you could find fault with St. Philip. For whatever one reason you want to remove these individual names, you're ignoring all the good they did for our city and our country. Just a couple of examples are Beauregard's work on the city's infrastructure, and that is 2 minutes. The next comment is by Mary Meissing Dubala, not a paid representative. I am old and hence do not deal well with change, but in my years I have learned that no one is perfect, that opinions and values change, and that it is unfair to judge 19th century people by 21st century morals. Hence, I do not question the need to change the street name. Hence, I do question the need to change the street names. However, these changes are to stand out most in my mind. Lee Circle. Given the central location of Lee Circle, I believe a unifying theme that can be embraced by all residents would be Music Circle. Our musicians are in all of our hearts here in New Orleans. Leah Chase was a wonderful lady and should be honored, but Orleans Avenue, the location of her delightful restaurant, could provide her with that honor. Harmony Circle will only lead to more controversy and division when deciding who should be honored where. There, we need unity. Beauregard Avenue and Drive. I'm not a historian, but do hope that in selecting street names to be changed, the consideration was given to the positive contributions of these people as well as their errors due to the times which they lived. BGT Beauregard was not only a Confederate soldier, he was a local man who, after the war, advocated for civil rights and voting rights for former slaves. He was an engineer who stabilized the building that is now U.S. Customs House and invented the system of cable-powered street railway cars that is now our streetcar. And the final comment is by Judge Calvin Johnson, retired. I write in regards to the renaming of Governor Nichols Street. There are those who fought for civil rights in New Orleans and were pivotal in reshaping civil rights in Louisiana and in America. One of those was Lois Elon. He defended those involved in the civil rights movement, both in New Orleans and in Louisiana. The landmark Supreme Court case, Lombard versus Louisiana, was Lois' case. Lois volunteered to represent civil rights workers across Louisiana who were arrested in demonstrations, including representing me. If you do an examination of his life and work, you will agree with me naming Governor Nichols Street, Lois Eli makes total sense. And that is all the public comments on this site.
Thank you very much. And just briefly, I'm going to address a few of the things that you read. One, the people who are being removed from these streets were also condemned by their contemporaries for their support of slavery and white supremacy. So I wish that people who make those comments would do a little more research before they address the public as if it's a fact that this was something that was simply of their time. We have also engaged with people of all ethnic backgrounds throughout this process, including the Italian American community. I have the email chains to prove it. I would like for the public to understand that we have done outreach to everyone that has reached out to us. We've had conversations with them, and we have taken into consideration the commentary that was given to us. Again, just because your point of view may not have ruled the day or ruled the day on a recommendation doesn't mean that it was ignored. The last thing I'll say is that ignoring past injustices does not promote unity, as one of your comments stated. It simply communicates to the aggrieved party that they should simply get over it. So to the extent that there is some equitable outcome from this process for those who were aggrieved by the placing of these street names on and other monuments on public property during the era post-Reconstruction, that is also what we're looking at here in terms of remedying those issues alongside the patriotism aspects of this. They cannot be ignored, is my point. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick one, Carl.
Yes, sir.
In the mindset of addressing these falsehoods when they come up, and not everyone, some of them we've already addressed. The statement that African Americans served in the Confederate Army, that's just not true. Untrue, totally untrue. You can't find any reference to that in any credible book or historian will back that up. That is a falsehood. That's it.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Westmoreland. And that's not to be confused with the fact that some of them were brought to the conflict with their slave owners to assist them as body men and other help roles. Correct, Commissioner Westmoreland? Yes.
True. There were no Confederate units. There African American Confederate units. There were no African American Confederates in uniform.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other comments, commissioners? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7, which is a vote on our final report recommendations. I will entertain motions on the following items from our February 10th commission meeting first, which were published with the agenda for today's meeting. After the motions are made, we will have public comment for each read into the record. If a motion outside those published with the agenda is made, we will take a 10-minute recess to allow further public comment on each of those new motions. The first motion that we would like to address from last meeting, I think Commissioner Raymond has that one regarding Lee Circle. Commissioner Raymond, you're on
I'm
mute.
sorry.
Commissioner Connor, we actually do have public comment on the 2 removals.
Okay.
One public comment on the 2 removals. So I should read those before we go on to the next parts.
Okay, that's fine. Go right ahead.
By R. Lanasa, not a paid representative. I recommend all the previous be removed from consideration until such time the public can fully participate in the redressing of thousands of residents. Under the Louisiana Constitution, the public has a right to fully participate in public meetings and is clear beyond all question. Beyond question, all members of the public have an absolute right to fully participate. The Street Commission has failed in that duty to allow full public participation. A group of kids in Australia have been granted greater participation than the residents of the addresses under consideration. I recommend the item be tabled and the process restarted only when the public can fully participate and properly notice meetings with specific agendas that fully meet the letter and spirit of Louisiana Open Meetings Law. The non-essential New Orleans street renaming conditions to start over with fully open meetings that at a minimum
Rachel?
residents and property owners most impacted. In short, if you're going to change the name of Grandma Street, grandma and neighbors should have the lead on input for the address changes. From the beginning, the Orleans Street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside of public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused and restarted when the actual residents can fully participate. And that's all the public comment on that item.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Commissioner Raymond has rejoined us. Commissioner Raymond, did you have a motion on Lee Circle regarding our motions from last week? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to change the recommended name for Lee Circle from Leah Chase Circle to Harmony Circle. And I do want to note that this is a formality as we move forward with the process to rename Lee Circle Egalite Circle.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to Mark's motion? All right, hearing none, that motion dies. And just for the commissioner's sake, if you remember, last week we voted on Harmony Circle, Lee Circle going to Harmony Circle, but we lost some of the members before we got to the vote. So we're simply today ratifying what we did last week, even though down the agenda it may change because of other motions that have been suggested to be discussed today. So this is, as Mark said, simply a formality to make sure that the record reflects the proper order for doing these votes. So Mark, yes.
Carl, are we to then reconfirm what we did last week and then we take up the new item in the agenda?
That's correct. That's correct. And as you saw in your agenda item, there are 3 motions we seek to reconfirm based on last week, which there's this motion on Lee Circle to Harmony. There's also the motion that recommended that Washington Artillery Park be renamed as Oscar Dunn. And then the motion to recommend that Loke Place be renamed for Charles McKenna. So those are the 3 from last week that we will be basically today just ratifying with a vote. Okay, and then we'll go forward to the next set of motions, which were on the agenda today, which would alter some of those we just read. So with that, Mark, do you have another, or would you like to restate your motion and see if you can get a second?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to change the recommended name for Lee Circle from Leah Chase Circle to Harmony Circle.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly
Oh,
seconded.
wait a minute. I'm sorry. Did you say Harmony, Mark?
Yes, Commissioner Westmoreland, this is to basically, for procedural purposes, just to ratify what we did last week. It'll be
Okay,
taken
okay.
up again this week in a different motion.
Commissioner,
I apologize. I would like to rescind my second.
yeah, Commissioner Connor, can we actually pause on the Lee Circle to Leah Circle for a second and go to the other two? I want to talk with our executive counsel about something.
Okay, certainly. All right, so there was we also need to readdress the motion to recommend Washington Artillery Park to be renamed for Oscar Dunn. Would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and properly seconded, we recommend that Washington Artillery Park be renamed for Oscar Dunn. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, we will hold the vote until Andrew reads the public comment on this section. I think procedurally we're allowed to do that. And there's also the need for a motion to recommend Loke Place be renamed for Charles McKenna. Commissioner Sturpko made that recommendation at last meeting. So is there a motion to recommend Loke Place be renamed to Charles McKenna?
So moved.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Been moved and properly second that we recommend that Loke Place be renamed for Charles McKenna. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll hold that vote until the public comment is read as well. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Andrew, yes?
Yeah, just as some information. So we can table the vote on Lee Circle to Harmony Circle, or excuse me, Leah Chase Circle to Harmony Circle until we hold the vote on Lee Circle from Leah Chase to Egalite, and then remove the Harmony Circle one if that passes. So we can actually push this back on the agenda and just handle the other two motions, if that's the will.
Okay, unless there's objection, commissioners, I think that's a good solution.
Yeah.
And hearing no objection, Andrew, could you read the public comment for the motion for this section based on the, well, actually, I take that back. Andrew, would you like to read the comment after we've gone and put all the motions on the table?
We should just, you've made the two motions. The public comment is general to the group of motions.
Yes, so just do them all and then we'll hear the comments and then vote after that. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, is there a question? Okay, so I'll also entertain motions on the following new items which appear on the agenda regarding Lee Circle.
Sorry, Carl, we can do just the two motions right now with public comment. We have about 8 public comments on that.
Okay, well, let's do that and make this clean, please. Thank you.
All right. The first comment is by Caltrin Glado, not a paid representative. It is the opinion of this New Orleans resident who holds a BA in American history that the lens through which we view events evolves, as does our understanding of people, cultures, and places shaping our world. I'm also aware of the ongoing campaign of the R.E. Lee Monument Association to vociferously defend and whitewash both their namesake and the existence of Lee Circle. The Compromise of 1877 shuttered the efforts of the Reconstruction era to build equity for Black Americans, ushering in the Jim Crow era. During Reconstruction, Louisiana elected its only lieutenant governor, PBS Pinchback, who became a figure in Plessy v. Ferguson, a dark moment in Louisiana's history. After 1877, however, a tremendous backslide into wanton segregation and revisionist history began. And we can see it here in New Orleans with the 1884 erection of the statue idolizing Robert E. Lee. This statue wasn't unique in its message it sought to send to the residents of New Orleans. During the Jim Crow era, nearly 1,000 statues commemorating and defending the principles of the Confederacy were erected across the United States. Such monuments exist to remind Americans of the strata of racial supremacy during a period of significant terror and pain for Black Americans. It is an entirely easy and lazy excuse to revert to the tremendously debunked lost cause mythology to rewrite Civil War history. However, Robert E. Lee was not a misunderstood hero, nor was the Confederacy designed to protect states' rights from Northern aggression. For example, in 1860, just prior to secession, Louisiana Governor Thomas Overton Moore argued during his inaugural address that so bitter is this hostility felt towards slavery, which these 15 states regard as a great social and political blessing, that it exhibits itself in legislation for the avowed purpose of destroying the rights of slaveholders guaranteed by the Constitution and protected by acts of Congress. A few years earlier, in a lengthy letter written in December 1856 to his wife, Robert E. Lee opined on the necessary evil of slavery as something beyond the control of white Americans, in his mind, a bizarre form of moral necessity ordained by God. And that is 2 minutes. The next comment is by Bill Hughes, not a paid representative. I am just curious. I have not heard a huge outcry for the changing of the names of many streets. Has any commissioner polled just to see how many of our residents think it's worth the time and expense to change all of these names? Thank you, and I look forward to the answer to this question. Respectfully, Bill Hughes. The next comment is by Pete McGraw, not a paid representative. Leave all the street names as they have been. Name new streets or numbered streets after new or forgotten heroes. Please inquire of the Streets Renaming Committee for all members to state where they were born. Next comment is by Tiva Kaplan, not a paid representative. I fully support changing New Orleans street names to the proposed names by the Street Renaming Commission. This is such a step forward towards equity for the city. New Orleans is leading the country, and I would like to live in a city where the city government cares about all of its citizens. Renaming the streets is a crucial action to give honor and prestige to those who deserve it. The next comment is by Ronnie Lanassa, not a paid representative. I recommend all motions be tabled and allowed to lie over after being fully publicly published and noticed proactively to those most impacted for a minimum of 1 week. The street commission and our council are failing to allow full resident participation, coupled with ignoring the clear Louisiana legal obligations to protect the public's right to observe and comment. Beginning with the illegal proxy and straw man polls using the SurveyMonkey tool, the commission has operated outside the Louisiana Open Meetings Law in the spirit of the false promises of inclusion and transparency. The commission has yet to publish an accurate specific agenda notice. The illegal practice of encouraging and accepting non-agenda motions, deliberations, and votes with no layover, rendering zero chance for public participation is simply wrong. The non-essential New Orleans Street Renaming Commission should start over with fully open meetings that at a minimum directly include the residents and property owners most impacted. In short, if you're going to change the name of Grandma Street, Grandma and her neighbors should have the lead on input for the address changes. From the beginning, the Orleans Street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside the public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused and restarted when the actual residents can fully participate. The next comment is by Brett Newkirk, not a paid representative. All of this monument removal and street naming is a complete waste of time and money that could be spent on fixing the real problems of the city. All you are doing is making white people feel better about themselves and not creating change that matter. Respectfully, Brett A. Newkirk. The next comment is by George Silvertooth, not a paid representative. I strongly support all the efforts of the Renaming Commission. This renaming is important in the celebration of New Orleans. We are honoring our own ever-changing history, not destroying it. We are also celebrating our culture. All of the streets are currently named after generals and politicians. New Orleans is about food, music, and dancing, not war and politics. So let's name our streets after the people who actually built the aspects of the city we love. Of course, no one would bat an eye if this suggestion was Reagan Avenue. This shouldn't be political. This is about celebrating our amazing diverse culture. The next comment is by Sandra Soul, not a paid representative. The renaming of the streets is past due. As a previous resident of New Orleans, I totally support this renaming. The next comment is by Bruce Scoggins, not a paid representative. I am humbly opposed to all street naming. As Lee Circle is never the official name, why not keep the name Tivoli Circle? The next comment is, the final comment is by Jesse Breckenridge, not a paid representative. I support the New Orleans City Council Street Renaming Commission's recommendations for street renaming. And that is all the public comment on that set of agenda items. Carl, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And I'd like to now bring back to the table, the two motions that were made. One, we'll begin with the motion to recommend Washington Artillery Park be renamed for Oscar Dunn. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to the vote. All in, Andrew, we need to do a roll call on this.
We're going to do a roll call on this.
Yes.
First, can we just have the motion made again and seconded, please?
Okay. The motion was made Motion to park. Darn it, I've just that quickly have forgotten. Who made that motion?
It was either Rich or me. I think it was me.
Yeah, you're right. It was you, Mark. Yes. And it was seconded by,
But Washington Park was seconded by me.
by Commissioner Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and as a reminder, yes instead of yay. All right. Commissioner Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond,
Yes.
Commissioner Westmoreland,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Sturpko,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jones-Williams, have you joined us?
Yes,
Okay, and your vote is yes?
yes.
Thank you. So I have 7 yeas, no nays, and the motion carries.
Thank you. I'll call back to the table the motion to recommend Logue Place be renamed to Charles McKenna. That motion was made by Commissioner Sturpko.
Okay.
Don't remember who seconded it though. Seconded rather.
I did.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray.
Okay, Commissioner Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond,
Yes.
Commissioner Westmoreland,
Yes.
Commissioner Sturpko,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Commissioner Hamilton, yes.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Williams,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jackson. Did you already say yes? Oh, sorry about.
He
All
said
right.
yes.
Yep. Okay. So
I did say yes.
thank you for that. That's 8 yeses, no nos, and that motion carries.
Thank you very much. So I will now entertain motions on the following new items as listed in the agenda. First of which is a motion to change the recommended name for Lee Circle from Leah Chase Circle to Egalite Circle. Commissioner Hill, I believe that is your motion.
Yes, that is my motion. I would like to just share a few.
Well, could you make the motion first and let's get a
Yes,
second?
yes. I'm sorry. I move to change Lee Circle to Egalite.
Commissioner Hamilton, second.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and properly second that the recommended name for Lee Circle be Egalite. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Hill.
No, just wanted to add that I've thought about what unites the goals of this commission and all those who've participated in these efforts with good faith and an open mind, and believe that the name Egalite is really appropriate, much more appropriate to our history and the story that we want to tell. And I've returned to some of the potential names in the report, and one thing that's striking about so many of the stories told there is how they highlight just how central our city is to the great promise of America. And so again, I reiterate my nomination to change Lee Circle to Egalite.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none.
Is it possible?
Go ahead, Commissioner Jackson. Yes.
I'd like to also make a motion if that's possible.
So, there's a motion on the table. Are you offering an amendment to that motion or?
Yes, I am.
Okay, then.
If there's going to be another motion, we will have to take another break for public comment.
Right, and that's only if the motion receives a second, correct?
Correct. Yeah, if it doesn't actually vote it on, then it wouldn't be. But yes, if there is a motion and a second, then we will have to take a public comment break.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jackson, what's your pleasure?
Thank you. I like to motion what I've had on the table once before, Dorothy May Taylor for Lee Circle.
And I'm sorry, so it's been moved that Commissioner Hill's motion be, I was about to say supplanted, I'm sorry, but excuse me.
Forgive me for interjecting myself. The appropriate kind of instrument here would be a motion to amend to replace the name under consideration with Dorothy Taylor.
Yes. Is there a second to that motion? Excuse me. Is there a second to Commissioner Jackson's motion? Hearing none, it dies for lack of a second. We return to the motion at hand. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Changing it to equality.
In the previous motion that we made to rename Lear Chase to Harmony Circle, we talked about being able to honor multiple people in that space. Is this the appropriate space to recommend that they consider Dorothy Mae Taylor be honored in Egalite Circle? I guess that's a question for Andrew.
Well, can I make this statement first? The design of the circle is something that would be left up to the council and the City Planning Commission rather, but we have expressed our desire as a commission over the last several meetings that if we go to a concept name for the circle, it be used to honor multiple members of our community as well as other possible concepts or groups that participated in the theme of that name, right? And so in this particular instance, anyone who stood for equality and equity, all of which are involved in the discussion of egalite, I think would be fair game for a design phase of this circle, which in my estimation, I think Dorothy Mae Taylor certainly would be one of the people who should be in that mix. But Andrew, do you have any further comments on that?
Like I said, the commission can offer any amendment to this motion that it chooses. I would tend to agree with Commissioner Connor that this is probably going to be a longer conversation about the various folks who are going to be honored, but it's the commission will to amend the motion. They can. We will have to take a public comment break if that is the case.
Yep.
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hill? You call the question?
Oh, yes. I call the question, please.
Okay. So all in favor of changing, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Public comment. Yes.
Yes, is by Gerald Lanasa, not a paid representative. Any new motions must be allowed to lay over for a minimum of 1 week after the motion is introduced and properly publicly noticed. The commission's illegal meetings and deliberations outside of the public view is very troubling. To regain the property owner's trust, the entire process should be restarted only when the public and residents most impacted can freely participate by streets in the meeting. The street commission, our council are failing to allow full public resident participation, coupled with ignoring the clear Louisiana legal obligation to protect the public's rights to observe and comment, beginning with the illegal proxy and straw man polls using the survey monkey tool. The commission has operated outside of the Louisiana Open Meetings Law and the spirit of false promises by inclusion and transparency. The commission has yet to publish an accurate specific agenda notice. The illegal practice of encouraging and accepting non-agenda motions, deliberations and votes with no layover, rendering zero chance for public participation is simply wrong. Under the Louisiana Constitution, the public has a right to fully participate in the public meeting. Is clear beyond question. All members of the public have an absolute right to fully participate. The Street Commission has failed in that duty to allow participation. A group of kids in Australia have been granted greater participation than the residents of the addresses under consideration. I recommend the item be tabled and process restarted only when the public can fully participate in properly noticed meetings with specific agendas that fully meet the letter and spirit of the Louisiana Open Meetings Law. The non-essential New Orleans Streets Renaming Commissions to start over with fully open meetings that at a minimum directly include the residents and property owners most impacted. In short, if you are going to change the name of Grandma Street, Grandma and her neighbors should have the lead on input for the address changes. From the beginning, the Orleans street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside of public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused and restarted when the actual residents can fully participate. And that is all the public comment on new motions to be voted on.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
Chairman Connor, just my name is Adam Swinsick. I'm the executive counsel for the city council. Just to be clear, the meetings of this body comply with both the letter and the spirit of the open meetings law. There is no requirement that any of the instruments being voted on lie over for a week. I think that the commenter is thinking of the 1 week requirement for an ordinance. The agenda complies with the open meetings law. So, commenters are entitled to say whatever they want to, but I would like the council or the commission to proceed confident that it is not engaged in any violation of the open meetings law.
Thank you very much, Adam. And I was going to make mention of that and ask you that very question to make sure that the public understood that as well, because while there are some members of the public who have watched multiple number of our meetings, there are of course some who may be tuning in for the first day, and a large number of the comments are continuously repeating allegations that are false or have been proven false over the course of the last 8 months. And so the one in particular that keeps getting repeated is the folks from Australia running the process, and that has been debunked for several months now. And I wish that that the public would refrain from making those false comments.
Actually, if I can, had a glitch in the system. There actually are more public comments on this specific agenda item, so I should get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. First comment by Patricia Gallagher, not a paid representative. No changes to any street names. The next comment is by Peter F. Lesses, not a paid representative. I don't see how anyone could respect the city council that votes for such street name changes without fair arbitration on both sides. The next comment is by J. Aloysius Cunningham, not a paid representative. I would like to voice my support for keeping the recommended name for Lee Circle, Leah Chase Circle. As we move forward as a community and consider renaming streets and other public spaces, I believe we should continue to uplift individuals who serve as models for our community rather than the values they represent. By honoring Leah Chase, we honor her contributions to the community and the values she represents. While Egalite Circle and Harmony Circle as names reveal the intention behind this work, they do not create a tangible image in the public mind. The next comment is by Antoinette Reynolds, not a paid representative. Leah Chase Circle would be a wonderful memorial to a New Orleans hero. The next comment is by John East, not a paid representative. I wanted to write regarding the name of Lee Circle. I believe Leah Chase deserves the honor. Leah Chase is a civil rights icon. She was tough. I met her, but she also with such deep worth and caring. She quietly, sternly, cheerfully, and consistently brought people together throughout her life, decades of perseverance. That beacon of hope and goodwill should be put on a pedestal. Hopes and presidents reached out to her too. An indefatigable spirit, a smiling unifier. About 2 years ago, I went to Southern Food and Beverage Museum. They also had a petition to rename Lee Circle, Leah Circle. In a way, there is a harmony to this because the name change is slight, but like good art, it is thought-provoking. During the Street Renaming Commission meetings, it came out that similar names would also help first responders and GPS as maps are updated. It would help with tourists too. But more profoundly, Leah Chase brought us together with food in the depths of segregation and kept on bringing us together for decades after. In a real way, our food has been a great harmonizer, and she brought these traditions together in an incomparable way. Please rename Lee Circle, Leah Circle. Respectfully, John East. The next comment is by John Thornton, not a paid representative. Renaming Lee Circle, Leah Chase Circle, a civil rights icon is absolutely fitting. The next comment is by Tessa Jaeger, not a paid representative. I'm disappointed that the suggestion to rename the circle after Leah Chase is being rejected. Egalite also feels like an odd choice. It is an empty statement and feels like a particularly strange choice to use the language of a past colonizing people to replace a problematic name. The next comment is by John Thornton, not a paid representative. I apologize. The next comment is by Nicole Drager, not a paid representative. I vote to keep the renaming of Lee Circle to Leah Chase Circle. Next comment is by James Demestre, not a paid representative. Blacks represent 65% of the New Orleans population. That 68% now has an opportunity to show their strength, denying history existence by erasing all its signs and traditions. There is nothing new. There is nothing new as it reoccurs often in third world countries, and it stimulates segregation, not compassion, cooperation. It's the Negro's opportunity to press for retribution. In New Orleans, the Negro has voter control, and its white citizens should not expect anything more. The white man has bent over backwards to accommodate the Negro for past injustices by a small minority of its race. Blacks are doing more to promote polarization and racism today than by ever before, and I don't think he realizes it. Next thing he will want, your firstborn male child. Next comment is by Charles Marsala, not a paid representative. This is a flawed motion. There's nothing legally named Lee Circle in New Orleans. As you're talking about Tivoli Circle, are you talking about Tivoli Circle or Place? Why not call it by its legal name? This is being seen by many citizens as an agenda of the City Council and Street Renaming Commission that rather than honor our military at Tivoli Place as a Blue Star Memorial, revenge is a higher priority. Duncan Plaza could become Harmony Plaza to honor civil rights leaders and the walk along the river to honor our chefs and entertainers. It appears this fixed an error from the last meeting of voting on something's agenda. Suggestion, pull off the agenda and place it in the next meeting agenda with either Tivoli Circle or Tivoli Place so the public knows what you are talking about. Next comment is by Mildred Methvin, not a paid representative. Egalite Circle is an inspired and aspirational choice for the renaming of Lee Circle. At this precipitous moment in our nation's history, as we grapple with historic levels of wealth and income inequality, institutional racism, gender disparities, and other types of inequality woven deep into the fabric of our community, Egalite Circle will remind us of the aspirations and values upon which our nation was founded. Thank you to the members of the Renaming Commission for your hard work in this historic moment. I'm proud that New Orleans is leading the way toward truth and reconciliation. The next comment is by William Vickery, not a paid representative. Lee Circle should be left as Lee Circle. The city has made its point and removed the statute because a few people disagreed with Lee. You won't be able to please everybody, but if you use Lee Circle as a learning device to learn about General Lee and people to come to their own conclusion with the freedom of their thoughts, you might be surprised that good can come from it. The next comment is by David Rubenstein, not a paid representative. Best decision ever to change the circle on St. Charles Avenue to Egalite Circle. Congratulations to the committee who proposed it and to those who voted for it. I think it would be wonderful to have the city publish a complete up-to-date on the suggested changes, possibly in the Advocate and on the city website so we can easily find it. It is not well publicized now. Is South Jefferson Davis Parkway on the list for change? David Rubenstein. The next comment is by Robert Weber, not a paid representative. Lee Circle in the original name was Tivoli Circle, Tivoli Place. I believe it should not be changed to Leah Chase in any way, shape, or form. The next comment is by Patricia D'Arcangelo, not a paid representative. Lee Circle should be named for Andrew Higgins. Eisenhower called him the man who won the war with his boats. Forever, he will bring pride and recognition to the city long all their names will fade into history. The city deserves this recognition of our hero. The next comment is by Alan Hyde, not a paid representative. Why not keep the still legal name of Tivoli Circle? In general, the figures to be honored in the renaming may have fame that is great now, but only doubtfully so 100 years from now. The next comment is by Deborah Goldgaber, not a paid representative. I am extremely enthusiastic about the proposed changes from Leah Chase Circle to Egalite Circle. It calls upon the resonances of the high ideals of the American, Haitian, and French Revolution. It recalls our Francophone roots, which distinguishes New Orleans from any other major American city and reminds us that equality is a universal ideal for which we and our ancestors strive. The next comment is by Curtis Loud, not a paid representative. Please don't pick Egalite as the new name for Egalite Circle as the new name for Egalite Circle. No one even knows what this means. We can do better, please. The next comment is by Karen Smoyer, not a paid representative. Robert E. Lee was an outstanding general of his time. Like many, he held slaves, as did General Grant, and free blacks in New Orleans. This entire process is a feel-good exercise, nothing more. Rather than address real problems such as crime, failing infrastructure, and incoherent response to COVID, time and money were wasted on something that will not improve race relations. It will cost money to replace street signs and other signs, relabel maps, and other changes. The next comment is by Patricia Gallagher, not a paid representative. No changes to any street names. The next comment is by Mary Yannick, not a paid representative. I would love for Leah Chase's legacy to be honored by our city by naming the circle after her. Her momentous achievements speak to concrete lived experiences of equality, justice, and peace, even in the face of grave injustice. We can best profess these values by appreciating her specific contributions to the civil rights struggle, local culture, and our culinary traditions. We must ground ourselves in our history rather than empty platitudes for harmony or equality. The next comment is by Drew Henry, not a paid representative to whom it may concern. I believe Leah Chase Circle would be a wonderful name and a phenomenal way to honor someone who meant so much to New Orleans. Next comment is by Tessa Jager, not a paid representative. I'm disappointed to see the movement to not rename Lee Circle after Leah Chase when other streets are being named after famous men. It seems odd that the suggestion to name one after a woman is being removed. This is also a city that is famous for its food, so a chef is an appropriate choice. The next comment is by Sean Randall, not a paid representative. Please rename Lee Circle to Leah Chase Circle, not Harmony Circle. The next comment, I apologize. I believe that is all the comments on this motion. I'm just going to do one last double check through the system to make sure though, because these ones are coming a little weird today.
Okay, no, that's okay. Thank you. And while Andrew does that search, commissioners, do you have any comments or questions?
Carl, I have a comment. I just want to note to the public that it is, and we talked about this at the last meeting, it's the understanding of the commission that the city council will be seeking to build support to rename Orleans Avenue to Leah Chase Avenue, where her establishment sits.
Thank you very much for that reminder. Are there any other comments or questions, commissioners? Andrew, have you found any other comments?
I have not on this specific item. I do apologize. I did find some for the two items that were withdrawn. So I will go back and read those once we have had the vote on this motion. But it appears that I've read all the public comment on this item.
Thank you very much. So call the question on the motion to change the recommendation for Lee Circle from Leah Chase Circle to Egalite Circle. The motion has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Oh, well, Andrew, would you please do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Connor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond?
Yes.
Commissioner Westmoreland? Commissioner Westmoreland?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Sturpko?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson? Commissioner Jackson?
Yes, Andrew, I have a question. What are we motioning on? What are we voting on again?
Motion to change the name of Lee Circle to Egalite Circle.
Lee Circle to what now?
Egalite.
Egalite.
You said say yes or no. No.
Okay. Commissioner Hill
Yes.
and Commissioner Jones-Williams.
No.
So I have 6 yeas, 2 noes, and the motion carries.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We'll move on to the next motion, which is.
If you don't mind,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead and read into the record those public comments on the
Okay, yes, go right ahead.
Yep.
Well, Andrew, because it's so that there is no confusion, since you've read the comments based on the motion for Lee Circle and also the one for Conrad, I'm assuming, Street.
There are separate comments for Conrad.
There are separate ones. Okay, so go right ahead and do what you were doing. Go ahead.
All right. So this is for the agenda items, which were not voted on, but were just noticed. People had made comments on them. And so in the spirit of transparency, we'll read all. One is by Brian O'Brien. It is another sign of misplaced priorities that the city of New Orleans even considers renaming the streets with their crime problems, financial issues, and general degradation of the infrastructure. New Orleans is becoming more and more of a third world country. It is sad. Next comment is by Charles Marsala, not a paid representative. Washington Park has a Confederate cannon as its centerpiece and lists the battles the cannon was used in. Members of that group became part of the White League of 1874. The monument was erected by Moon Landrieu in the 1970s. Is it not being removed because Moon Landrieu erected it? At least one Landrieu ancestor was a Confederate soldier. How do we know it was not erected to honor Landrieu's ancestor? For the public's clarity, this was Washington Park, not Washington Artillery Park. Washington Park is the park right off of Frenchman in the Merritt. Next comment is by Robert Sevkic, not a paid representative. Without George Washington, there is no United States. I understand the desire of the majority of the community to rename places directly tied to Louisiana's shameful post-Reconstruction era past, but George Washington was not part of that time. Like all great people, President Washington was not perfect, but above all, the people in the past truly still deserves our honor and respect. He was the indispensable man responsible for creating this country, the grand experiment, the United States of America. Yes, it has taken time, but the USA has brought more freedom to more people, both here and across the earth, than any other country or any other conceived by man. Keep Washington Park an artillery park and honor the father of our country. Next comment is by Ernest L. Hans, not a paid representative. I fully support the change to Lois Edward Eli Street. For decades, Mr. Elias used his formidable legal and interpersonal skills to move New Orleans towards a more equitable treatment of civilian guests. And that's all the public comment on that. We can now move to the new motion regarding Conrad Street.
Okay, before we do that, are there any comments by the commissioners on those or responses to those comments? I actually want to remind those who were not listening to a few meetings ago when we discussed Washington Artillery Park, that was an actual unit that fought in the Civil War. And correct me, historians, if I'm inaccurate in the way I'm describing that. But that's why that's up for commentary, not for change, rather, not because of the relationship to General George Washington.
That is correct, Carl.
Okay, thank you very much. So is there any other discussion? Hearing none, bring the motion to a vote to change and recommend that I'm getting myself confused. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move on to the motion to recommend that Conrad Street be renamed to Jasper. Do I have a motion for that? I believe that's Commissioner Westmoreland.
Say that again, Carl.
Is the motion to recommend that Conrad Street be renamed Jasper your motion?
It wasn't, but it can be.
Okay. So I'll backtrack, and anyone who would like to make that motion, please do.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly second that we recommend that Conrad Street be renamed Jasper. Is there any discussion? Are there comments, Andrew, to this motion?
Yes, there are. The first comment is by Tim Lott, not a paid representative. Motion to recommend, it is my understanding that CCSRC was formed to obtain public input into the renaming process and would also give more consideration to residents closest to that area and be most impacted. The CCSR has proposed to rename Conrad Street to Jasper. This proposal was voted against by Mr. Sturbko as the commissioner representing District A and includes the areas of Lakeview where Conrad is located. It is presumed that Mr. Sturbko believed that the feedback from the residents in the Lakeview area indicated the other street names were more desirable, including Mount Carmel Street. Given this, can the commission provide the public with a number of verified Lakeview residents that actually requested the Conrad Street be renamed Jasper? With the presumed answer being very few, if any, I would hope the commission reconsider the renaming Conrad Street to Jasper. Furthermore, the commission should place more weight on the recommendation of the district commissioners that represent these areas. In this case, Mr. Sturbko has diligently worked with various Lakeview residents and has performed his commissioner duties and has heard their comments firsthand. The commission outvoted an individual commissioner on issues within a district she represents, gives the appearance of the commission having its own agenda, and is not placing the concerns of those residents most impacted by the renaming concerns above its agenda. Commissioners, today you have time to fix this perception. Next comment is by Melvin Schneider, not a paid representative. As a Lakeview resident, please name the street for Mount Carmel. The next comment is by Nick Weldon, not a paid representative. Oh, actually, that is the only comments. Let me just do one quick check through. Yeah, and those are all the public comments on that item.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Commissioners, do you all have any comments on this motion? Any more discussion, rather? Hearing none, Andrew, would you do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond,
Yes.
Commissioner Westmoreland,
Yes.
Commissioner Sturpko,
No.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
No.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Williams.
Yes.
That's 6 yeses and 2 nos, and the motion carries.
Thank you very much. So next we'll move on to, I think, which is a motion of Commissioner Raymond's, that we move to affirm the previous actions of the commission recommending changes as listed in the agenda. Commissioner Raymond?
Yes, so moved. Or do I need to restate it, Carl?
Is there, yeah, if you wouldn't mind restating it, so that we've been going through a lot of motions. Yeah.
I would like to move to affirm the previous actions of the commission recommending changes to streets, parks, and public spaces as listed in the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and properly second that we affirm the previous choices made by the commission for final recommendations in the final report. Is there any comment or discussion on this motion? And just for clarity, ladies and gentlemen, this is to basically state that we are incorporating all of the names, including the things we did today, in this one list that we will put in the final report to the city council. Andrew, are there any public comments on this portion?
Yes, we have 46 public comments on this item.
Okay.
Okay. The first comment is by Damon Frank, not a paid representative. Though I support the renaming of many streets for consideration by the city, I do not believe that Calhoun Street should be changed due to the following reason. Calhoun Street is part of the thematic naming of streets that is particularly vivid and that is a particularly vivid and unique part of New Orleans. Calhoun Street is geographically located to be by Clay and Webster, as we have the Muses and Napoleon victories in other places. The theme of the adjacent streets, Calhoun, Clay, Webster, is a unique and subtle theme that may be lost on some people. But the actual geography of the streets teaches American history and its spatiality at the time. And at the time and of the time when New Orleans, uptown New Orleans, was being developed in the 1840s. Henry Clay was the great compromiser, and his street was intentionally situated between Calhoun of the south and Webster of the north, as he sought compromises such as the one in 1850, when these three figures became known as the Immortal Trio. Hence, to remove Calhoun Street erases this important history lesson about conflict and compromise. The next comment is by Connie David, not a paid representative. This is erasing all our history. These were all great men who at that time did nothing wrong, but now we know it was. Washington was the first president of the United States, and without him, we would still be under English law. Robert E. Lee was a man who cared about his country and loved it. Andrew Jackson was a great American also. You cannot erase history or act like it did not happen. The next comment is by Tori Emmerling, not a paid representative. I'm opposed to the renaming of Calhoun Street. I believe the consideration goes beyond the authority of the commission and does not fall within the specific ordinance language. More personally, however, I grew up on Calhoun, and it has a personal importance separate and apart from the entirely unconnected to whomever it was once named. It is the first address I ever learned as a toddler of where to report home if I became lost. It is where I learned to ride a bike. It is where birthday parties, anniversaries, and countless other family celebrations have been held. And it is where my family has found solace, grieved, and rebuilt together after the loss of family members, the destruction of Katrina, and countless other moments that form and impact individual lives. For many, the street has an identity of personal memories just separate and apart from whatever improvement or provident reasons for which it was originally named. It is seeking to erase it. The effect is to erase the tangible aspect of a place where many have called home, and which is often intrinsically tied to their identity and personal memories. I further object to the proposed substituted name. Not only is it a mouthful and overly burdensome for a street address, by invoking a religious name, it also undermines the constitutional principle of separation of church and state. The next comment is by William Mason, not a paid representative. Please do not change any street names. City leadership should focus on more pressing issues like crime, litter, homelessness, and improving drainage infrastructure. Thank you. The next comment is by Patricia Gallagher, not a paid representative. No changes to any street names. The next comment is by Joanne Santani, not a paid representative. Keep all of our street names. Don't you have more important problems in the city? Do you want all citizens to leave? This is a gumbo city. Don't let outsiders influence you. Will be our way of being another Chicago inner city, Detroit inner city. Just take a walk down Broad Canal Street near Barone Street. Scary. The next comment is by Ann Middleton, not a paid representative. Spend the money on street repairs, stopping murders, food pantries, and S&W board turbines or better electricity, please. I pay property sales and income taxes, and I would like to see city services improved to benefit all citizens. We need less flooding, fewer potholes, and bad guys off the street. Stop wasting time and don't waste needed money, as you have more important issues to deal with than street names. Suggest if names do get voted to change, the expenditure costs, including those to business, come out of the pockets of those that wish for and voted for the changes over numerous other critical needs. Thanks for your logical consideration. Next comment is by Melissa Lee, not a paid representative. The continued memorialization of the Confederate and post-Civil War advocates of white supremacy on street signs does not reflect the values that New Orleans upholds today and is a direct affront to the descendants of the enslaved and oppressed Africans who labored to build the city. Changing street names is not about erasing history, but rather ensuring that the people who are being honored uphold our values. History has not changed. However, we must change the prism in which we view this issue to ask ourselves, what is it that we wish to honor? What is it we wish to commemorate? What is it we wish to celebrate? And lastly, who is that we want to be? Let us change our symbolic landscape and set the marker to reflect the who and what we aspire to be. Next comment is by Ronnie Lanessa, not a paid representative. Vote no, start over. I suggest the entire process street by street be restarted with a focus on the residents who will use these addresses. Complex, unfair, multi-word street labels are simply not practical for those that must use them. From 911 to drivers navigating with smartphones, street names, labels, and addresses must be practical. The labels and addresses of our residents should not be selected by a bunch of kids in Australia taking a virtual class. In short, if you really must change the name of Grandma Street, Grandma and her neighbors should have the lead on input before the address changes. From the beginning, the Orleans Street renaming effort operated far away from Louisiana, the residents, and outside of public view. I recommend all these efforts be paused and restarted when the actual residents can fully participate. The next comment is by RMA Marks. I'm a fourth generation, not a paid representative. I'm a fourth generation citizen in the city, and I plead with the council not to wipe out American history, the American history of our city. New Orleans is the sum of all has gone before. Let us not fall victim to cancel culture. Please avoid the tendency to go too far off center. Our history is our history. We will be judged by our actions from this day forward. I believe Lee Circle should revert back to its original name. Tivoli Circle is part of our history. Without the French Spanish founders, we would not even be New Orleans. Thank you. Next comment is by Raphael Gang, not a paid representative. I'm writing to express my support for name changes in the process that has been used to identify and rename streets, parks, etc. My request would be that this is not the end of the work of the committee, and that the city council continues the process by establishing a formal process for identifying and updating a set of landmarks across the city that recognizes history in its entirety, from the founding of the city to slavery to Jim Crow to the civil rights movement and beyond. When people live and visit New Orleans, it's not just the streets that should tell them our history. Thank you for your consideration. The next comment is by
Andrew is frozen.
Andrew is frozen
Yeah, he's
again.
frozen again. Is Jarvis still on the line?
I don't think.
Go check it out.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
For the pronunciation. Please stop this madness. As much as you have said that this committee is all about inclusion, it has been anything but. The decisions here are by a select few pushing through their agenda of cancel culture. There are decisions being made by a few are affecting the whole city and creating a bigger divide instead of bringing us together. I'm sure your efforts could be better directed to helping our city. Crime, sewage and water board, N2G potholes, our economy, schools, and the list goes on. God help us. Stephanie Emmerling, not a paid representative. The comment below submitted by my daughter, Tori Emily, succinctly describes our attachment to the name of the street of our family home. As a young child, Tori always pronounced Calhoun Street as Calhoun Street, which still makes us smile when thinking about it today. Her father passed away in our home, making it a place we feel closest to him. Calhoun Street is more than a name. It is part of our family, a part of our lives, and a part of many other families and establishments' lives. Discarding it would leave a hole in our hearts. A home is not just a structure, it is the place where the structure is located and all that encompasses it, including its name. The name of our family home is 2501 Calhoun Street. I believe this is Ms. Emmerling's daughter's comment, but I'll just read it just to be sure. I'm opposed to the renaming of Calhoun Street. I believe the consideration goes beyond the authority of the commission and does not fall within the specific ordinance language. More personally, however, I grew up on Calhoun and it has a personal importance separate and apart and entirely unconnected to whoever it was once named. It is the first address I ever learned as a toddler of where to report home if I became homeless. It is where I learned to ride a bike. It is where birthday parties, anniversaries, and countless other family celebrations have been held. And is where my family has found solace, grieved, and rebuilt together. After the loss of my family members, the destruction of Katrina, and countless other moments have formed and impacted individual lives. For many, the street has an identity of personal memories separate and apart from whatever improvident or provident reason for which it was originally named. In seeking to erase it, the effect is to erase the tangible aspect of a place where many have called home, and which is often intrinsically tied to their identity and personal memories. I fully object to the proposed substituted name. Not only is it a mouthful and overly burdensome for a street address, but by invoking a religious name, it also undermines the constitutional principle of separation of church and state. The next comment is by Charles Marsala, not a paid representative. Although state law probably allows you to use parliamentary procedure to restrict public comments, this is contradictory to the commission's claim of having robust interaction with the public. There are over 30 streets or public parks to comment on, which means 4 seconds per street or park. Plus, what about the streets submitted by the commission? Mayor Walmsley and his 1932 city council put up that white supremacy plaque on the Battle of Liberty Monument. Yet the commission omitted any review of the street. Gene Lafitte was a slave trading pirate, no review of him. Around the country, other cities have experts that want Washington, Lincoln, and others removed. Did the commission review them? Do Lincoln's white supremacists remark get a pass because the council does not want to have other citizens join the objections to massive street renaming? Governor Nichols is in the French Quarter is in the heart of Little Palermo. Why wasn't the Italian name considered? The next comment is by Graham Hill, not a paid representative. I support all the proposed changes and feel that this is a significant positive step towards addressing racial inequality and systematic racism in our community and in our country. The next comment is by Elizabeth Tetlow, not a paid representative. I would like to see streets named for the Honorable Lindy Claiborne Boggs, who represented us so incredibly well in Congress, and for former Mayor Mitch Landrieu, who effectively integrated city government and was Secretary of HUD under President Jimmy Carter. Both, although white, did so much for the city and people of color. Next comment is by Sierra N. Bowens, not a paid representative, to the New Orleans Street Renaming Commission. My name is Sierra Bowens, and I am a student attorney working with the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project at Southern University Law Center. We are working with the family of Mr. Edwin Williams, Sr. to commemorate Mr. Williams and his community, as well as engaging in a process of healing. Honoring Mr. Williams with a street renaming would be an opportunity to right a wrong while demonstrating to Mr. Williams' family that Mr. Williams' life and legacy means something to the city of New Orleans. General Meyer Avenue is an ideal location as the Williams family roots remain strong in this area. Renaming General Meyer Avenue after Mr. Edwin Williams will address the harm done to an entire community when naval soldiers violently murdered a member of the community without recourse. Thank you for your time and consideration, Sierra and Bowens. The next comment is by William Vickery, not a paid representative. With the pandemic going on and people who are financially hurting, the city is ready to spend money on renaming streets in New Orleans and waste taxpayers' money. What good will come of renaming streets? It will only cloak history that will be hidden from tomorrow's next generation. If that is the case, why don't we redo all of the ironwork in the French Quarter so that it matches and is uniform? I hope it never comes to that, because that is what makes the French Quarter so unique. New Orleans is a unique city with many attributes and a lot of history. Please be open-minded about the rich history of the wonderful city that we call home and live the street names the way they are. Sorry. The next comment is by Kurt Bouchert, not a paid representative. I'm emailing opposition to street namings of historical figures in our city. This is a needlessly divisive issue and unfairly judges historic figures through the modern day woke lens, which none of you would pass. There are many people deserving of streets and parks named after them, so a better exercise would be to rename generic street names that have no ties to the city or nation's history. This won't end well and just drives more resentment and destroys the historic fabric of our fair city. The next comment is by Aaron McCready, not a paid representative. My name is Aaron McCready, and I'm a clinical student of the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project, CRRJ, at Northeastern University School of Law in Boston, Massachusetts. CRRJ investigates historical racial violence in the U.S. South from 1930 to 1970, and has recently been investigating the death of Mr. Edwin Williams Sr. in Algiers, Louisiana in 1943. I write today to urge the Commission to rename General Meyer Avenue after Edwin Williams Sr. I understand that the Commission intends to rename General Meyer Avenue after Dr. Louis Lombard. Dr. Lombard is, of course, deserving of this honor, and my comment today is in no way intended to diminish his lifetime service as a civil rights advocate, healthcare advocate, author, scientist, and businessman. Rather, I urge the Commission to consider the process of street renaming as an opportunity not just to honor individuals, but to return those individuals to their communities. Edwin Williams Sr. was stolen from Algiers nearly 80 years ago, and today I ask the Commission to bring him home. Edwin Williams Sr. was a lifelong resident of Algiers, a devout member of the congregation at Beautiful Zion Baptist Church, a loving husband to Lillian Alvarez Williams, and a devoted father to 4 young boys. Late in the evening of April 27, 1943, Edwin and his young family were walking home from church and crossed beneath the Newton Street viaduct as 3 white sailors from Algiers Naval Station sat atop. As the Williams family passed below, one of the sailors poured beer on Lillian and the baby asleep in her arms. When Edwin protested, the sailors berated him with racial epithets, descended the stairs of the viaduct, shattered the beer bottle over his head, and stabbed him repeatedly with the neck of the bottle. Edwin Williams Sr.'s life was stolen by men in uniform who, after committing a senseless act of violence, continued down Newton Street to Algiers Naval Station. They may well have reached General Meyer Avenue on their return. Despite the efforts of the Williams family and the neighbors in Algiers and civil rights leaders like Thurgood Marshall and A.P. Turo, only one of the sailors was charged. In the trial that ensued, the perpetrator painted Mr. Williams as an aggressor, claimed he had acted in self-defense, and tarnished the memory of a man who had merely spoken up to defend his family. After 55 minutes of deliberation, the jury acquitted the perpetrator of manslaughter, and that is 2 minutes. There are more 4 comments that are cut off by the 2-minute mark. I am sending these out to all commissioners so they can read them in full.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Excuse me.
Is by Jonique Williams, not a paid representative. My name is Jonique Williams. Edward Williams Sr. is my grandfather. He lost his life protecting his 2-month-old infant from 2 sailors in 1940s Algiers. My father, James Williams, was that infant. I grew up with stories. I apologize. Can you stop it? Give me 1 second. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty with this.
Okay.
Okay, we should start that one over. My name is Jonique Williams. Edward Williams Sr. is my grandfather. He lost his life protecting his 2-month-old 2 sailors in 1940s Algiers. My father, James Williams, was that infant. I grew up with stories about who my grandfather was to his family and community, and they shaped my family's love for Algiers. We are Algiers. Edwin Williams Sr. should be honored with a street naming, not only because of his untimely death in Algiers, but the legacy continued through his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who remain active in the Algiers community. My father taught at Algiers schools, including Fisher Elementary, Murray Henderson, the former Adolph Meyer, served as principal at Schwartz, and has been the pastor of Beautiful Zion Baptist Church of Algiers for 21 years. As a family, we own and operate Stevenson's Academy of Hair Design in Algiers Point since 1985. My brother and I are 3rd generation serving the Algiers community. Algiers is our family home. Renaming General Meyer would be one of the most fitting tributes because General Meyer literally touched the history of my family in Algiers. General Meyer intersects 1, Pacific Avenue, the home my fathers and brothers were born in. 2, Elmira Avenue, site of Beautiful Zion Baptist Church, which was last place my grandfather was alive before he was murdered, and the current church of his sons, including pastor, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Flanders Street, the home of my grandmother for over 50 years until her death in 2012. Tesh Street, site of our family business, Stevenson Academy of Hair Design. 5, LB Landry, formerly Whitney Avenue, high school where all of our uncles graduated. Losing my grandfather has greatly affected my family. My father never knew his father. My grandmother was left to raise their 4 children alone. The trauma of having a family member being taken away in such a violent manner has generational repercussions. It pains me to know how much our family in Algiers has lost as a result of unchecked hatred. And that pain has never been completely healed because of the impunity enjoyed by the men willing to kill another. And that is 2 minutes. The next comment is by Lolis Eric Eli. My father, Lolis Edward Eli, dedicated his adult life to the cause of racial justice. Long after the civil rights movement in the 1960s ended, he continued to advocate for the American principles for which it was found, which were its foundation. While I cannot claim to be a disinterested party, I can claim to be a knowledgeable one. I know the pain of being a son of a city that celebrates treasonous traitors with street names and statues. I know the pain that comes from our civic silence on the great heroes of our history. I know the joy of witnessing our steps towards redressing these legitimate grievances. My hope is that in renaming these various streets, including the one to be named for my father, our city can take an important and unified step toward more fully embracing the ideals which we exemplify at our best. The next comment is by Harry Shearer, not a paid representative. I'm expressing my support for renaming in honor of Lolis Eli, a great local civil rights leader. The next is by Gina Allen, not a paid representative. Judge Nils R. Douglas was a local who grew up to do great things for our community. How many homegrown New Orleanians fought selflessly for our civil rights before this nation's Supreme Court? The street naming is one way to honor his memory, service, and courage, and show young New Orleanians that great men are born here, nurtured here, and recognized here, right here in New Orleans. The next comment is by Christine Jordan, not a paid representative. Nils R. Douglas was a distinguished civil rights attorney and judge who worked tirelessly to make sure Black people had access to the most precious fundamental right in our democracy, the right to vote. He worked to register thousands of Black voters by co-founding and leading Southern Organization for Unified Leadership, SOUL. He also successfully defended 2 cases in the U.S. Supreme Court. The next comment is by Joanita Douglas, not a paid representative. This comment to affirm the renaming of Patton Street for Nils R. Douglas would serve as a daily touchstone for present-day justice champion students and citizens who want and need proof of change. The name Nils R. Douglas would reflect the values and traditions of the people who grew up like he did, where he did, and who look like him now and years to come. The changes would reflect the good that is produced by earnest work. The change would reflect the good that is produced by earnest work is a benefit for all people. The next comment is by Martin Douglas, not a paid representative. I'm advocating on behalf of renaming Patton Street to Nils R. Douglas Street. Nils Douglas, a lifelong resident, is deserving of this honor for his commitment to fighting for racial justice in all his endeavors. The renaming will continue to prove New Orleans' commitment to diversity and racial harmony. Next comment is by Annette Adams, not a paid representative. The street renaming is an acknowledgement of work done for the good of all people. Let us not fall into the trap again that the Confederacy and its heirs will right a wrong. Let us simply move on to recognize a healing. The street being named in honor of Nils R. Douglas represents his passion for justice, but more importantly, New Orleans' acknowledgement for good. The next comment is by Susan N. Richardson, not a paid representative. I urge the council to affirm the name change of General Taylor Street to Lolis Eli Street. Mr. Eli's contributions to the civil rights movement was significant and should be honored by naming a street in the city after him. The next comment is by Colette Delacroix, not a paid representative. Thank you for your diligence. I suggest that some of the streets be named for concepts. In New Orleans, we already have such, industry and hope, etc., instead of adhering to only persons such as loving, generosity, courtesy, peaceful, kindness. Next comment is by Melvin Schneider, not a paid representative. Please do not change any street names. The next comment is by Ole Steinberg, not a paid representative. To whom it may concern at the New Orleans Street Renaming Commission, my name is Ollie, and I'm a graduate student conducting research with the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project at Northeastern University. The project researches racial violence in the U.S. South and through its work. I've had the honor of working with the family of Edward Clifford Williams Sr. Mr. Williams was an Algiers resident and a father of 4. He was killed on his walk home from beautiful Zion Baptist Church in 1943, defending his wife and infant son. Much of Edward Williams Sr. family remains in Algiers to this day, with deep ties to their community. His son, Pastor John Williams, has been the pastor of Beautiful Zion Baptist Church for 21 years. The Williams family owns and operates Stevens Academy of Hair Design in Algiers Point. His sons have become pillars of the Algiers community, and his grandchildren want to see him honored publicly. Edwin Williams Sr.'s family asked the commission to honor the life he led by renaming a street in his memory. General Meyer Avenue represents the cross-section of their lives, intersecting the streets of many landmarks for the Williams family. They drive on the street daily, and the loss of Edwin Williams Sr. has created lasting trauma within the family. Publicly honor Edwin Williams Sr. is in the family's community would be a first step in righting the wrong of his killing. Dr. Rudy Lombard is a worthy candidate whose work enriches the legacy of New Orleans. The Williams family asked the commission to consider the great historical significance at General Meyer Avenue for their family specifically, and their desire to see this street renamed for Edwin Williams Sr. The Williams family is still healing from this loss. Renaming General Meyer Avenue for General Williams represents an opportunity for justice and remembrance of a man whose murder was acquitted by a white jury. The action by the commission would create a tremendous opportunity for the greater New Orleans community to learn of Edwin Williams Sr. life and legacy, and an opportunity to bring justice to Mr. Williams' descendants. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next comment is by Joseph Allen, not a paid representative. I'm not familiar with Mills Douglas' legal career. I only knew him as my great uncle. And in that capacity, he was a great role model. As an elementary school student, I remember showing Uncle Nils my report cards. I wasn't particularly impressed with myself when I got all A's, but Uncle Nils always showed such pride in me. I learned from him to value my accomplishments, and my lesson has served me ever since. The next comment is by Jari Honora, not a paid representative. I'm writing in support of the proposed Routenay Street. Dr. Louis Charles Routenay, a free man of color, a Louisiana Creole, was truly a patriot who pledged his life, his fortune, and his honor to the cause of liberty and justice. He risked his life and invested his personal funds in publishing newspapers. That issue clarion calls for the abolition of slavery, voting rights, equal access to the schools and public accommodations, and justice for all, regardless of race or class. Public recognition of Dr. Routenay would lift up his example for future generations of New Orleanians. The next comment is by Mariela Casellas, not a paid representative, to the New Orleans Street Renaming Commission. My name is Mariela Casellas, and I write to you in support of renaming General Meyer Street in Algiers after Edwin Williams Sr. I'm a graduate student at Northeastern University Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Clinic. As part of my work with the clinic, I am investigating the case of Mr. Edwin Williams Sr., a black man who was killed in Algiers, Louisiana in 1843 at the hands of sailors in the now non-existent Newton Street viaduct. He lost his life protecting his wife, Lillian Williams, and two-month-old baby. Miss Lillian Williams raised her children in Algiers after her husband's death. Edwin Williams Sr. should be honored with a street naming where he lost his life. His legacy has continued through his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Most of the family members still live in Algiers and remain active members of the community. With ties to the beautiful Zion Baptist Church and Fisher Elementary, for example, Algiers has been home to the Williams families for decades. Additionally, more impartially, renaming General Meyer and after Edwin Williams is a critical step that restores justice to Mr. Williams family members who have been raised without a father or grandfather figure and who have suffered Mr. Williams' death for years. The violence Mr. Williams experienced in 1943 remains in the imaginary of many of the family members. They want everyone who passes through General Meyer to know the story of Mr. Williams and recognize the awful events that occurred there. This renaming brings justice not only to the family, but to the Algiers community, as the story is critical to the history of Algiers. Renaming General Meyer after Edwin Williams is a first step in the direction toward justice. I urge you to consider this motion. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Maria Casellas. Next comment is by Michael Wallace, not a paid representative. I'm writing in support of the very appropriate renaming of the street for Mr. Lola Sila, who contributed so much to the growth and betterment of the city and community of New Orleans as a servant of all people and a pillar of the community for decades. The next comment is by Ada Goodley, not a paid representative. First, I would like to thank the members of the Street Renaming Commission who have diligently worked on this delicate and necessary issue. I am proud to be a resident of New Orleans, witnessing what appears to be a sound start to the effort of deconstructing images and symbols of our racist past. My name is Ada Goodley, and I'm the director of the Louis A. Berry Institute for Civil Rights and Justice at the Southern University Law Center. A partner in the work that we do is the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project, CRRJ in Boston, Massachusetts, under the leadership of Margaret Berger. Together, we are continuing the work of investigating and pursuing restorative justice in historical cases of racially motivated homicides from the Jim Crow period, 1930 to 1960. In the course of CRRJ's work, there is always a standout case that presents us opportunities to pursue the kind of restorative justice that facilitates hearing. Because the case investigated by CRRJ are from a specific and older time period, evidence is usually washed away by time and rarely can a perpetrator be found alive. However, some success, like in the case of George Stinney, can be achieved in spite of the weathering effects of time. The murder of Edwin Williams Sr. is one of those cases. While we may not be able to litigate this case today, we can still pursue and achieve restorative justice through truth-telling and acknowledgement. For the Algiers native, Edwin Williams Sr. and his beautiful family, it is worth every effort to right this wrong and tell this truth. Mr. Williams was a devoted father and church-going man who was killed on April 27, 1943, for defending his wife and child against drunken naval officers in Algiers at the site of the old Newton Street Aqueduct. History books and local media have not told the story, and while civil rights leaders of the time, like Thurgood Marshall, tried to seek justice for the Williams family, this case lived and died in a time where a Black man could not find justice, even with multiple witnesses and sound reason. The justice system turned a blind eye to Mr. Williams and his family, and community witnessed once again the duality of the justice system in America. Little by little, efforts such as the street renaming are being employed to reshape our values and deconstruct racism, and that is 2 minutes. The next comment is by Jonathan Sutton. I'm in full support of the street name changes being made to celebrate real people who have made New Orleans the best city in the world. And I'm thrilled that our streets and monuments will represent the correct historical narratives of our colonial past and dismantle white supremacy and the great lie that we've all been told about our history for generations. The next comment is by Gerard Williams, not a paid representative. Dear CCSRC, thank you for lending your ear and a message and request that will follow in this letter. My name is Gerard Williams. Edwin C. Williams Sr. is my late grandfather who was killed on April 27, 1943, in front of his children and wife, just feet from his home and within blocks of his church in Algiers, Louisiana. My grandfather was killed at the intersection of General Meyer and Pacific Avenue by a white enlisted United States naval officer who is currently stationed just a few blocks away at Algiers Naval Station. Edwin Williams Sr. was married to Lillian A. Williams, and they resided on 924 Pacific Avenue, Algiers, Louisiana, with their 4 boys. Lillian's grandchildren affectionately called her grandmother. Due to the initial death of our grandfather, his grandchildren never got a chance to know or call him anything. What's even more impactful is the fact that his 4 younger sons grew up without a father. There isn't anything that the CCSRC or anyone else can do to change what happened in 1943, but the commission can help the family and Algiers community in healing by renaming General Meyer Avenue to Edwin C. Williams Avenue. Edwin C. Williams Sr. Avenue. I also want to speak about the current proposal to rename General Meyer Avenue to Dr. Rudy Lombard. Dr. Lombard is deserving of having the commission propose to have the street renamed after him. If you consider the location of General Meyer with the location of where Edwin Williams was tragically killed, then it's clear that this street is intimately relevant. The justice system failed in 1943 to convict my father's murder. It took a white jury 55 minutes to conclude that 32-year-old Black man walking home from Bible study with his wife and children and kids was an aggressor who picked a fight with 3 white uniformed naval officers. Your commission can continue to carry out your mission by adding some semblance to an injustice for not only my family, but the Algiers community where our family continues to be interweaved. Edwin Williams' son, my uncle, James Williams, is the owner and operator of Stevenson's Academy of Hair Design in Algiers and is also the pastor of beautiful Zion Baptist Church, also in Algiers. And that is 2 minutes. The next comment is by Betty DeMarco, not a paid representative. I'm writing in support of changing the name of Patton Street to Nils R. Douglas. Nils R. Douglas was a great civil rights attorney who worked for Black people to share in the same democratic rights given to whites. I was blessed to know Mr. Douglas at the height of his civil rights work. Mr. Douglas deserves to be recognized for his work in New Orleans and the U.S. Next comment is by Lenora Gobert, not a paid representative. I strongly recommend that the Captiville Street be renamed for Dr. Louis Charles Routenay, founder of the original New Orleans Tribune, an outspoken champion of the civil rights during Reconstruction. There was no stronger voice for the enfranchisement of people of African descent than Dr. Routenay. He is truly a historic figure that should be recognized. The next comment is by Cindy Bridges, not a paid representative. The entire commission is a kangaroo commission. When citizens who speak up, the commission ignores them. When pleas fall on deaf ears. Thousands of residents across the city disagree with what the commission is doing. They remain silent because they know the outcome was established when folks like Commissioner Westmoreland were appointed and Sue Mobley was invited into the process. The commission is why people lose faith in government institutions. It's a bait and switch of completing a task that governing bodies are capable of changing while ignoring the actual problems they can't fix. Drives became O.C. Haley. Beauregard Square became Congo Square. Beauregard Middle School became Thurgood Marshall. What improved education? The name change? No, the adoption of charter schools. Hurricane Katrina did more to improve public education than any elected official. So we really should name a street for Hurricane Katrina. The next comment is by Tom Ray, not a paid representative. I'm writing on behalf of my uncle, George Luff Sr., who is 93 years old and does not have a computer or access to one in his home where he's confined due to the pandemic. George wanted me to strongly recommend that if Calhoun Street must be changed, he would like it to be in the honor of Private Edward Ed Bronner, who lives on Calhoun Street and died by a German sniper on August 7, 1944, at the age of 27 during World War II, while trying to liberate the village of Lou, France. If the street name must be changed, I agree with my uncle to change the name to Bronner Street to honor a man who gave the ultimate sacrifice to New Orleans and his country, his life. Thank you for your consideration, Tom Ray. The next comment is by Marianne O'Coin, not a paid representative. I oppose the renaming of any streets in New Orleans, and this is why. America is a nation of history. To ignore this would be folly. To erase it would be dangerously radical. Despite this seemingly conventional knowledge, various local and state governments, starting with New Orleans, have incredulously taken upon themselves to act as the sole interpreters of the entire nation's history. So specifically, you have entered the dangerous realm of revisionist politics, threatening the very physical fabric of American nation. For anyone not familiar with history, the former post years of the French Revolution spurred the creation of a terrifying and radical political faction, the Jacobians. This radical political movement took it upon themselves to define what constituted appropriate and inappropriate representations of French society. The Jacobians' goal was, and their modern descendants' goal, are one and the same: destroy anything and anyone that dares to disagree with the narrative. Fueled by hate and revenge, rather than the rationality and reason that guided the Enlightenment, the Jacobians embarked on a campaign of historical purging. Their objective aimed to eradicate all entities related to this defunct French monarchy. They acted to rewrite history or destroy it altogether. The most popular objects of Jacobian destruction existed in the form of symbols, signs, monuments, memorials, and statues. Does any of this sound familiar? Fast forward almost 250 years. Here we sit in an eerily similar situation yet again. We find the stability of Western civilization in the same perilous situation. In the Middle East, ISIS has run rampant, destroying priceless, irreparable relics of ancient history in fits of joyous rage. Memorials have been lost forever. Now Jacobianism has found a new home right here in the USA. The methods differ throughout history, but the results are always the same: the irrevocable removal of priceless history, art, and culture, coupled with the violent targeting of anyone who dares to disagree. The Jacobian goal seeks to eradicate civil discourse and silence those that disagree. And that is 2 minutes. The next comment is by Amanda Hill, not a paid representative. Thank you so much to the street renaming for your time and thoughtfulness to this important process. This is an important opportunity for New Orleans to celebrate unsung heroes and heroines and set an example for the rest of the country. And I'm just going to do a quick check, but I believe that is all the public comment on this matter.
I'll give you a second to do that, Andrew. As a reminder to the commissioners, these comments are in response to Commissioner Raymond's motion to affirm the previous actions of the commission, recommending changes to streets, parks, and public spaces as listed in the agenda under item number 7. Did you freeze on us again, Andrew? I think he did.
He did. I'll go check on him again.
Thank you. Commissioners, do any of you have any comments based on the comments that Andrew has read so far? Or questions? Okay, no comments or questions. So we'll have to wait for him to reconnect so we can make sure there are no more comments.
There are no more public comments. And it does seem we are back live. So if you'd like to just go over whatever was stated.
Okay, yes. So again, commissioners, before we do the roll call vote, this is on a motion to affirm the previous actions of the commission, recommending changes to streets, parks, and public spaces as listed in agenda item 7. It was moved and properly second. Andrew, would you please do the roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Connor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond?
Yes.
Commissioner Westmoreland?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton? Commissioner
Yes.
Hamilton?
Sorry, yes.
Sorry, Commissioner Sturpko?
No.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Williams?
Yes.
And that is 7 yeses, 1 no, and the motion is adopted.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Commissioner, so we have voted to recommend the renaming of a total now of 35 streets, 3 parks, and 1 public space to the city council in our final report. And for the record's sake, they are as follows: Beauregard Avenue to Sherwood Woody Gagliano Avenue, Beauregard Drive to Doris Jean Castle Drive, Berman Avenue to Rudolph Desdunes Avenue, Berman Place to PBS Pinchback Place, Berman Highway to Elnora Pete Highway, Berman Park to Dr. Morris FX Jeff Senior Park, Bragg Street to Celestine Street. Burke Avenue we recommend to be combined with Burke Road and become Juan San Malo Avenue. Calhoun Street, we recommend Father Louis J. Toomey Street. Capdeville Street to Judge Ivan L.R. Lamel Street. Comus Court to Julia Aaron Humbles Court. Conrad Street to Jasper Street. Drew Avenue to Francis Joseph Goday Avenue. Forshey Street to Charles Buddy Bolden Street. General Early Drive to Dent Family Drive. General Meyer Avenue to Dr. Rudy Lombard Avenue. General Ogden Drive to Herman Midlow Drive. Governor Nichols to Lolis Edward Eli Street. Lane Street to Georgia Street. Loke Street to Charles McKenna. Robert E. Lee to Allen Toussaint Boulevard. Lee Street to Leontine Goins Luke Street. Lee Circle to Leah Chase Circle. I'm sorry, to Elegante. Excuse me, it's getting late, y'all. I'm sorry. Lee Circle to Egalite Circle. McShane Place to Joseph Guillaume Place. Mouton Street to Margaret Elizabeth Street. Palmer Avenue to Edith Rosenwald Stern Avenue. Palmer Park to John Minor Wisdom Street Park. Patton Street to Nils R. Douglas Street. Penn Street to Dr. Sarah Mayo Street. Sem Street to Veronica Brown Hill Street. Raphael Sem Street to Dolly Adams Street. Slidell Street to Henry James Red Allen Street. Tulane Avenue to Allison Tootie Montana Avenue. Vineyard Street to Diane Mamadi French Cole Street. Washington Artillery Park to Lieutenant Governor Oscar James Dunn Artillery Park. Wiltz Lane to Dr. Louis A. Martinet Lane. And Sophie Wright Place to John Jack Nelson Place. These are, and just for the public's consumption, where these names will be, if they are recommended to be changed as we recommend by the city council, the city planning commission will look at them obviously and determine how they should actually be listed on the streets with regard to the full names and things of that nature. So just because they appear to be long on here, that doesn't mean that once it goes through the process, those are the names that will remain as we've read them, right? There'll be some variation thereof. I'd also like to state that recognizing that this commission's charge was not to consider changes to all the streets, parks, and public spaces, we know that there are some which benefit from further consideration by the council. A short list of those suggested by the public include Jackson Square, Milne Playground, Poydras Street, Caffin Avenue, Washington Park, Little General Taylor Park, I'm sorry. Some of these spaces and streets require consideration for change or contextualization in our opinion. Jackson Square represents the complexity of these considerations. We must answer hard questions like, are we better served as a society if we remove Jackson or if we tell his story in context, including his more horrific deeds? Jackson defeated the British soldiers at the Battle of New Orleans alongside slaves he enticed to fight with promises of freedom, but at the battle's end told them to return to their plantations. We have documented history of at least one of those particular slaves. His name was suggested for another street. Free people of color also fought with him, only to return from victory still having limited rights, although more than slaves. Jackson, as president, ordered the Army to ignore Supreme Court rulings in favor of the Cherokee Nation and illegally, forcibly remove those natives from their land. Of the 18,000 Cherokee forced to walk from Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina to Oklahoma, approximately 4,000 of them died along the way. This, my friends, is seen by many as at its best as genocide. In my opinion, it would be beneficial to name the east and west sides of Jackson Square Bobancha Way out of respect for the native inhabitants of this region, even if only as honorary street names. This would allow their history to be told to locals and the almost 20 million visitors to our city each year. These facts about a US president demonstrate our dilemma before practically considering contemporary fiscal concerns of annual brand value to our city of Jackson Square being named Jackson Square in our tourism income. I strongly suggest that our city leaders look at these and other places and spaces, clearly defining that no matter when they occurred, atrocities like genocide and slavery don't get to stay hidden because of nostalgia, convenience, or apathy. So are there any other discussions about agenda item 7, commissioners?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes. Commissioner Westmoreland.
We've all been at this for 10 or 12 weeks now, and generally seems to be mostly consensus among us. But when there isn't, we should hear why. So I'm highly interested in why Commissioner Sturpkow voted no. We just voted on essentially the essence of what we've been doing here for 10 or 12 weeks.
Months.
Tell us why you're voting no. We're commissioners here. Let's talk. Let's have this discussion.
Voted no because I disagree with some of the decisions made regarding street renaming in District A in particular. And I think I owe it to the folks that I'm representing on this commission to make sure that I'm both true to myself and true to what they have told me their opinions are.
No, yeah, I'm with you. All of the names in this district, which I live in, are Confederates, right? So, I mean, which Confederate do they think that we should keep up? All of them?
No. Look. You're mixing up apples and oranges. Nobody is complaining, and I did my own vetting about which streets need to be renamed. That's not the issue. The issue is the actual new names that were chosen. And I disagree And a lot of people who live in Lakeview disagree with certain of the names that were chosen to replace those Confederate names that absolutely have to be replaced. And that's the reason for my no vote.
Fair enough. But I don't think it's
Commissioner-
unreasonable for us to ask.
I agree.
Commissioner Sturpko, I want to thank you for that, and Commissioner Westmore, you as well. I think, Rich, we're at this inflection point, this reflection point on the work that we've done since the inception of this committee. I just want to reflect on why it was started in the first place. It was an acknowledgement that now was a time for change. Now was a time for us to push for unity to bring about real changes in our community. And we've done that. I think we all remember watching the brutal murder of George Floyd last year, and it sent rage through all of us. Nobody wants to see that happen in New Orleans or anywhere else in this country. Having said that, I'm appreciative of all the work that we've done together, having these difficult conversations in District A, hearing all of the opinions, and I respect those opinions. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? If you believe that a Confederate soldier was a hero, we just don't have the same opinion, and we can all move on from that. So I appreciate all of you for this hard work. Councilwoman Palmer, I really appreciate you putting this together and attacking this holistically. And I want to remind the public, just as everyone else has been reminding people, this work will continue past this. This is a series of recommendations. Now, it is up to us that have served on this commission to continue to push for this work to be done, to be completed, right? And it's also up to the people in those communities that disagree with this work to voice that opinion. And we'll continue this public discourse in the next space with the council.
Thank you, Commissioner Raymond. And just in fairness, I want to make sure that everyone understands Commissioner Sturpko is not opposed to the Confederate streets being brought down. It is that he thinks that the people that he is on this commission to represent would have liked to have different names on the streets than were proposed by this commission, which, you know, is fair. What isn't, which wouldn't be fair, would be if they were actually trying to say that they weren't heard, because that would be a slight to Commissioner Sturpko, who made certain that they were heard on multiple occasions in different association groups. And actually, the proof of them being heard is that they actually made some relevant points that caused us to make changes to some streets that were included initially, which is what this process was all about. It was about educating the public on what we were trying to do based on the ordinance and getting the feedback necessary to make educated decisions about the recommendations we're going to make to the council. Didn't mean that we were going to always agree with the feedback we got back with regard to specific naming, right? And as I've stated earlier in this meeting, you know, just because your name that you suggested didn't win the day, it does not equate to you weren't heard or that you didn't have a valid selection, right? What we have learned in this entire process is that there are so many New Orleanians who deserve to be recognized that, you know, we would not have enough streets to do justice to all the people that we have uncovered. Or some of us have uncovered, some of us have known about, right? But that is the great work of the panel of experts and historians in the public library. They gave us hundreds of names of people who, you know, did things that had impact well beyond New Orleans. And that, I think, you know, is the beauty of this project. That if anyone who's got an open mind to the overall concept of what we were trying to do, not necessarily the individual names, but the overall concept of what this commission was set up for, should leave it edified, should leave it knowing way more about way more people than they ever did prior to this conversation starting. To me, that is a huge win. Now, we will provide the recommendations in the final report to the council. The council will then do what it wants to with those recommendations, as is its purview as the elected officials involved in this process. It is what they should do. You know, we simply did what we were asked to do as an advisory commission, which was educate the public, gather that information, that feedback, provide what we thought were the best recommendations based thereon, and then the council will act on that. I am certain that they will go forward and have other meetings in the community. You know, there's no way that they couldn't, right? Because again, there were so many names of people with such great value that goes well beyond New Orleans. It really, and I know that it was done, you know, to coincide with the occasion, but the 300 for 300 in the tricentennial couldn't begin to hold the number of people who really deserve recognition. Literally, right? And that's with us only looking at 40 streets or so. Imagine what we would have found if we were looking at a larger universe of streets, right? So the last thing that I'm going to say about this particular part of this is to the public, know that you have a right and should continue to advocate with the council members about what you think you should be getting here. But what I also want you to know is that this isn't limited to this universe of streets that was identified under this ordinance. Anyone that you think is deserving of honor in this city, you should go to the council and make that recommendation for any street or any marker or monument that you think deserves to be placed in the public eye. And I really want you all to think about it that way and not think of it as this limited pie that we only have so many slices of. Do any of the other commissioners have something to say? If not, I'm going to go to Councilwoman Palmer, who asked if she could speak again at the end of this item.
Very briefly, Carl, I appreciate you saying that, and I want to make this very, very clear. If I didn't think this was a noble and a worthwhile and an extremely important effort, I would not have agreed to do this. It clearly is. And I want to reiterate, every street that was chosen to be renamed should be renamed. We have no business in this city honoring the folks who were being honored and are now, their names are going to be taken off. My vote reflects the fact, and I agree with another thing, and I want to make this clear, at least in District A, anyone who complains that they were not given the opportunity to participate in this process, I would respectfully tell them that's on you, not on this commission and not on us, because we bent over backwards to make sure that the public was very engaged in this whole process. And at the end of the day, my vote reflects the fact that I see my role as ensuring that everybody's opinions are taken into account. And there are a few streets, and 90% of this report, as you know, I voted for and agreed with. But we have to vote on a report in its four corners. We can't vote on 80%, we have to vote on 100%. And therefore, my conviction, and as I see my role, forces me to vote the way I did to make sure that the record is clear that there are certain renames, new names, that I don't agree with and the constituents don't agree with. And that's all it boils down to. And I appreciate you clarifying that.
You're very welcome. And you know, and the other thing, and I didn't say this, but I meant to earlier, you know, we talk about this on the district level because obviously the people who live on these streets are going to be impacted by the changes. But to be clear, this is a city-wide conversation. This is about the city's overall identity and brand, and what it wants the world to know is important to it and its citizens. So while we are not stating in that comment that we're not disrespecting anyone's individual opinion about their street, because yes, it does matter. And that's also why Commissioner Sturpko has taken the position that he has taken, right? It's also why Commissioner Jackson took the position he took based on the Lee Circle conversation and others, right? So let's be clear about that. You know, it's not a flaunt or an act of disrespect to your opinion based on your nexus to the street. It is that this is a wider conversation than just a district or a street or a neighborhood. And we need to keep that in mind as we move forward as well. Councilwoman Palmer, would you like to?
I just wanted to be quick and thank you all of you again. I think this past conversation shows how much thought everyone has put into it, how difficult these conversations are, and the fact that all of you and all the commissioners have shown leadership to come to the table and do that, and then to bring it back. Mr. Sturko, I know for a fact how hard you and Councilmember Giarrusso and Mark and all of you have gone out to the community to really, in a very difficult time, as we know COVID has been, to engage folks, but y'all really have gone above and beyond. And I do appreciate everybody's leadership on here. Each one of your voices have been so vital and important to this process. And I really like, Chairman, that you said what a great starting point we even have. This is not an ending, right? And we also now have an incredible body of work that I'm really looking forward to in the future. Using this as ways of markers, of tours. I mean, I think we have such a wonderful and rich history to share with the world, because we are such a unique place. Not just our history is unique, but the fact that, before COVID, we had 19 million tourists come through here a year. That gives us an opportunity to tell a story that has not been told. And I'm just so proud of the work that all of you had done. And I just really want to quickly also just thank the staff. And I feel that's really why I wanted to come back on too. I know Andrew Sullivan, my chief, is still there tonight. And I just want to thank him for all the work that he's done over these past 8 or 9 months. I know a lot of it is thankless. And we also have Nathan Carter, who is like the sole person right now with the council staff that's staffing all these different committees. So Nathan, I want to thank you. And I know Paul Harang, you're a disembodied voice somewhere, also making sure the technology works. So I just wanted to thank all of them, and I know they're doing it too, because they believe in your work and the work that y'all have done, and they want to honor y'all as volunteers for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Councilwoman Palmer. Is she frozen or is she done?
Commission members, forgive me for interrupting at this point. We do our best to get all of public comments, and we bend over backwards to make sure they're all in. There were 4, or I believe 5 public comments that were not read on the motion to change the name of Washington Park. My suggestion is, we voted on it. My suggestion is going to be that Mr. Sullivan will read those comments into the record, just so you have the benefit of it. And if, based on those 5 comments, any of you would like to file a motion to reconsider your vote, you can make that motion. Otherwise, I think we just want to read the comments so that we are kind of very clear on the record that everyone has had an opportunity to speak. Forgive my interruption.
Thank you, Adam. And for clarification, is it about Washington? Are the comments about Washington Artillery Park or about Washington Park? Artillery Park. Okay.
This is
Okay.
Washington Artillery Park.
Okay.
I apologize that the sheet was different than it normally is, and it really threw me for a loop today. And I apologize to the public commenters. It was not my intention to leave them out. The first comment is by Nick Weldon, not a paid representative. First, I want to applaud all the work put into this process by both the commissioners and the historians. At times your efforts probably feel thankless. Please know that there are so many of us in the city who have been enthusiastically following this commission and wholeheartedly support its purpose. Second, I want to thank you for being responsive to good faith community feedback throughout this process, including to Oscar Dunn's candidacy. He is not only significant for his unique historic achievements, but also for his universally recognized moral clarity as an elected official. Redeemers may have buried efforts to erect a fitting tribute to him after his death, and lost cause historians may have obscured his record for far too long, but I hope he finally gets his due via this process, and that the larger community may come to know him and his example. Washington Artillery Park is a fitting location for a man who spent his early years enslaved in the French Quarter, only to become emblematic of the very best New Orleans has to offer this state and nation. I urge the council to endorse the commission's motion to rename Washington Artillery Park for Oscar Dunn. The next comment is from Dr. Brian Mitchell, not a paid representative. As a member of the Dunn family, I am writing in support of the renaming of Washington Artillery Park in honor of Oscar James Dunn. There are few men that have been of greater historical consequence in the state's history. Outside of being the nation's first Black executive officer, Dunn is regarded as one of the state's most capable and honest leaders. On March 13, 1872, the National Republican maintained he, Oscar J. Dunn, was to them, Black Americans, their great persevative, their leader, their embodiment of their hopes, the real Moses who, as they fainted and famished in the struggle to reach the goal of acknowledged manhood, smote the rock of adversity till it gushed forth the cheering waters of hope. It was Oscar Dunn who led his people from the land of oppression and bondage. In one of the nation's most divided periods, Dunn was revered by both Democrats and Republicans as a fair leader and a noble man. He fought tirelessly to protect the interests of newly emancipated freedmen. He fought to protect formerly enslaved children from being re-enslaved under the guise of apprenticeship systems. He was among the first two black men appointed to the city council. He was the first black to serve in a judicial capacity. His children were among the first to integrate New Orleans' all-white public school system, and he personally incurred the expense to organize and register the blacks for the state's first interracial election. Dunn was so respected that the Crescent City's public offices and conveyances closed in his honor on the occasion of his funeral. He was so admired that Frederick Douglass gave a speech in his honor in the city. He was so loved that throngs of citizens, numbering in the thousands, turned out to pay their last respects to him by participating in his funeral procession. In all of these, if all these reasons are not enough, Dunn is this great honor because the state failed to live up to its own laws when it failed to erect a monument in his honor, as its duly elected legislators passed the law and afforded funding for under Act 57 of 1873. I believe that the committee should repair this grave injustice by writing the state's first black executive officer back into our city's history. I thank those who nominated Oscar James Dunn and ask the committee to consider the positive impact Oscar James Dunn would have made as a symbol of unity, peace, or excellence in the city. The next comment is by Nick Clark, not a paid representative. You do realize and know that Washington Artillery still exists. They are today's Louisiana National Guard, 145th Battalion of Field Artillery. Just happen to be the oldest, longest serving field artillery unit in our nation's history going back to the 1830s. I'm going to make the rhetorical assumption that changing the name of Washington Artillery Park is because for 4 years in the 1860s, the Washington Artillery served in the Confederate Army because their state, our state, sided with the Confederacy. You are looking to erase from the public square the name of our nation's longest serving field artillery unit because of 4 years in the 1860s. Dates change, but people stay the same. The human element, human nature, stays the same whether what year the calendar says it is. People 160 years ago had hopes, fears, and they had friends and family. They were moved by patriotism the same as the people are today. They had wives and girlfriends, children. They were business owners. There's nothing about the people of 160 years ago that isn't different about people in 2021 when it comes down to what it makes a person alive, motivates them, stirs passion within them, etc. Can you honestly say that everyone who fights within the United States military in 2021 does so for the same reason? That what politicians say to the media about the mission of the country for why our servicemen and women are in places like Iraq and Afghanistan are the same reasons every soldier thinks and feels while they're serving in the military? People join the military for a number of reasons: the money, adventure, to make their family proud, patriotism, etc. It is the same as 160 years ago. But the Washington Artillery could have been serving the United States since 1830, and before then, they were a part of the Louisiana Legion. And although they fought for the South during the Civil War, the Washington Artillery continued to serve in the United States in World War I, World War II, all the way to the present at Iraq and Afghanistan. They are our neighbors down at Jackson Barracks. New Orleans should be proud to know the longest serving field artillery unit in our nation's history is home right here in New Orleans. That is nothing to be ashamed of. We need to honor this, and that is 2 minutes. Next comment is by Morton Hurston Jr., not a paid representative. Washington Artillery also fought in World War II as the 141st Artillery Regiment and in Iraq Operation Iraqi Freedom. In both of these campaigns, they acquitted themselves with honor and valor defending our country against Nazi and jihadist tyranny. Please keep the name and respect of this courageous unit. Ethan Bridges, there is more honor in the Washington Artillery. Excuse me, the next comment is by Ethan Bridges, not a paid representative. There's more honor in Washington Artillery than in Oscar Dunn. And that is all the public comment that we have on this matter.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
I'm sorry, I was just going to recommend at this point, procedurally, I would open the door, having heard additional comment, whether anyone who kind of voted one way would want to offer a motion to reconsider. Otherwise, I think we're fine.
Yeah, that was going to be my question to the commissioners. Commissioners, does anyone want to offer a motion to reconsider Washington Artillery Park? Hearing none, we will move on. Thank you very much, Andrew. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is other matters. Commissioners, do you all have any other matters to discuss? Hearing none, I want to make a big thanks to all of you who helped us in this process to date. We're not done. We're on this for a full year from the day we were appointed. But thank you to council staff, especially Andrew, Paul, and Nathan for your time and attention the last 7 to 8 months. You all have gone above and beyond given the times in which we are operating and done a lot of work while furloughed, and we greatly appreciate that. Thank you, council members, for entrusting this commission of volunteers to act responsibly and fairly to engage and educate the public and provide you with our advice. The subject matter discussed here is reflective of necessary discussions happening worldwide. Thank you for recognizing the time for this public discourse, and change is now. History will remember your courage to start this reckoning with our past so we can have a more equitable future and lead the world as examples of how we live better together. I want to thank my fellow commissioners. You all have gone above and beyond, spending hours and hours, particularly in these meetings, but certainly outside of these meetings, trying to make sure that we live up to what we are supposed to do in this appointment. As you all have shown today, even we may not agree on everything, but even when we disagree, we can agree to be disagree rather without being disagreeable. And that has led us to the place where we are now, which is prepared to provide this list of recommendations to the council. Finally, I'd like to thank a big thank you to my wife, Monica, and my son, Quinn, for supporting, my late nights, my early mornings, the phone calls at our dinner time. And I hope you believe rather that your sacrifices were rewarded by the outcomes of this committee when we're finished. So if there's no further business, we've concluded our agenda and I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.